Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is a story about what if Naruto is banished and has a wife Taya. Before I start, please support for more amazing content and do consider subscribing to my channel and share this video with your friends. This is written by CarrotMaus and link in description and support writer. Let's start the video. Chapter 1. Banished. Wait Bachan, what do you mean I've been banished? Shouted a familiar orange-wearing, blonde-haired and blue-eyed boy named Naruto Uzumaki. He was simply in disbelief as he was just finishing his job. The Bachan he was referring to was one of the three legendary Sanins named Tsunade Senju. She may have looked no older than 25, but she is way older. Tsunade simply crossed her arms while saying, since you brought back that Gaki in bad shape. The council, or more specifically the civilians and the elders, voted on the idea of you being banished. The shinobi sighed, and I could not do anything about it. In 3 hours, you will need to leave. Naruto, still in pain from his fight with Sasuke, tried to get up so that he could not listen to her anymore, but failed. Tsunade then sighed again and said also they voted on your chakra to be permanently sealed off, including the Kyuubi. With this, Naruto looked at the older lady with complete shock and said what? The older lady sighed yet again. I'm sorry. Naruto simply slumped and said very well, if it's what they want so be it. With this, Tsunade left the room with nothing said. As Naruto was resting for a few minutes, the door suddenly opened to reveal Sakura, Ino, Neji, Lee and even Hinata, with angry faces plastered on their faces. Naruto then gulped as Sakura suddenly ran up to him to give him a punch to the face while shouting, you demon, I knew that from the start that something was wrong about you. Did you enjoy for what you did to Sasuke? Naruto simply got his arms in a defensive pose only for Neji and Hinata to use their Juken on them. With this, Naruto's arms were rendered useless. Neji then smirked while saying if it wasn't for the fox, you would never have beaten me, you demon. Meanwhile Hinata said yeah, I can't believe that I could even have loved you from the start. This caused Naruto to widen his eyes while thinking wait, she loved me? In which the fox in his mindscape answered yup. Naruto then just gave up and decided to endure whatever punishment he was given as the Kyuubi would fix him up as much as possible. But he wouldn't help but to notice that something inside of him was resonating. As Lee ended it with a Dinamiku and Tori, Shikamaru, Shino, Choji, Kiba and Tenten came in and Shikamaru said hey, leave Naruto alone. With this, the thing that was resonating from Naruto mysteriously disappeared and he felt better. Naruto's attackers just snorted and left the room. As Neji was leaving, he simply bumped into Shikamaru's shoulder and walked off. Shikamaru then sighed and sat on a nearby stool while saying sorry about that, Naruto. One of the elders decided to reveal the fox inside of you. Naruto then flinched and expected an attack only for Shikamaru to stand up and said with a smile, but, I only see Naruto, not a demon fox. With that, Naruto opened his eyes and teared up to know that some of his friends still thinks of him as a friend and not a demon. As his remaining friends left, a familiar gravity-defying gray-haired and partially masked ninja who went by the name of Kakashi suddenly appeared in a shunshin and sighed. He then gave Naruto his infamous eye smile while saying how you doing Naruto? Naruto simply shrugged and said I don't even know, sensei. Kakashi simply sighed again and placed his hand on the boy's shoulder while saying I'm sorry that this happened to you. I wish that I could have been a better sensei toward you. If only I refused the civilians' wishes back then I would have taught you the Rikiri. A tear suddenly dropped down from his visible eye and continued saying and now, this happened to you and it's all my fault. The Jounin then dropped to his knees while crying, sniffling and sobbing uncontrollably. Naruto could not help but to get up even with a lot of pain to hug him. The student and teacher stayed like this for a few moments. As Kakashi let go of the hug, a random Anbu appeared out of nowhere and said Naruto Namikaze, you are now needed at the gates of Konoha for your chakra to be sealed up. With that, Naruto nodded and tried to get up only for the pain to be quite unbearable. Kakashi simply gave the young boy a piggyback ride and shunshin it to the destination. As they got there, a bunch of rotten food were thrown towards Naruto and the young boy didn't do anything about it. He knew that a lot of people would be here, but not everyone from Konoha. It went like this for a few seconds up until Jiraiya appeared behind Naruto in a shunshin and whispered I'm sorry Naruto. I wish this didn't have to happen. Naruto simply nodded slowly as Jiraiya placed a chakra-consuming seal on his back. As Naruto stiffened, almost everyone there enjoyed at what they were spectating. Naruto then felt as all of his chakra and the Kyuubis were being taken away. Unknown to him and others, this would affect someone else. At a random temple. Now we see a blonde-haired and blue-eyed man who was in his 30s named Minato alongside his wife in red hair and green eyes named Kushina and daughter, who was the carbon copy of her father named Natsumi. This were the remaining Namikaze family other than Naruto. It turned out during the sealing of the 9 tails, Minato actually splitted the yin chakra into Naruto, while the yang chakra was splitted into Natsumi. They also decided to leave Naruto with his godparents while they trained Natsumi outside of Konoha. As Naruto's chakra was sealed, Natsumi suddenly felt pain of her stomach and shrieked as she fell to the floor. But this, Minato and Kushina ran towards their daughter to see that her seal mark suddenly turned to lava-like red. Minato then widened his eyes and said in shock, the yin chakra is merging with the yang one inside of her. Kushina then widened her own eyes and shouted, which could only mean both parents then shouted in unison Naruto. Minato then quickly fixed a seal and went to pack up so that they could have a reunion with their son. Unfortunately, they were too late. As Naruto was already on his way out of Konoha. Dates of Konoha. Naruto simply sighed as he said his goodbyes towards his remaining friends, including the Konohamaru Corps, his godparents and surprisingly Kakashi and Shizune, who were fiddling each other's hands. He already said goodbye to the Ichirakus, and they gave him one last ramen on the house. AM could not help but to hug the young not ninja anymore, while Tucci gave the boy some of his ramen recipes. So that he won't forget how his ramen tasted like. But when he went to say goodbye to Tsunade, he quickly ripped out the necklace that was given to him and gave it to her while saying sorry Bachan, but I can't have this in my possession anymore. Tsunade didn't say anything but teared up and grabbed the necklace. As Naruto was about walk off towards the sunset, he turned his head towards Kakashi and Shizune while saying sensei, don't get Shizune Nichin pregnant. Kakashi simply nodded and gave the boy a pat on the shoulder while giving his infamous eye smile. With that, Naruto walked off towards the sunset. Unknown to him, a familiar brown-haired Asian man who was wearing a pink t-shirt, a black jacket with a twin-lens reflex camera hung around his neck and a pair of jeans and his brother who was wearing a grey dress shirt, a pair of black pants and a cravat hung around his neck were observing him from the trees to make sure that no one from Root would try to attack the young boy. This was Tsukasa Kadoya and Levi Ackerman Kadoya, the destroyer of worlds and his brother. Tsukasa was also known as Decade, while Levi was known as Dark Decade. As Naruto was walking towards a nearby cliff, a random Root ninja appeared out of nowhere and tried to stab the young boy with his tanto. Only for Tsukasa to shoot the Root ninja in the chest with his Raidbooker in blast mode, while Levi handled the other Root ninjas by using his experience as a soldier during his fight against the Titans. As this happened, Naruto was simply in awe from watching two men battling hard-trained emotionless ninjas without a single hint of chakra used. This caused Naruto to think, what do they want from me? As Tsukasa and Levi killed them off, Tsukasa said, hey Naruto, we would like to help you out. Levi then continued, you see, after you heard that you were being banished, you were falling into despair. But luckily, the fox, your remaining friends and sensei, helped you to hold back your phantom, and you found hope. Tsukasa then nodded and said, so now you can use magic, I guess. But this, Naruto couldn't help but to laugh only to find out that both men weren't bluffing. Tsukasa then smirked as Levi snapped his fingers to reveal a brown-haired man in a red shirt, black leather jacket, a pair of red pants and a pair of black boots. This was Haruto-sama, and beside him was a red-haired, very busty woman in armor and a pretty short skirt. This was Urza Scarlet, or rather Urza-sama, as they were married. As both magic users appeared out of nowhere, Haruto smiled towards Naruto and gave him a pat on the shoulder while saying, hi Naruto, I'm Haruto-sama, but you can call me Tusan. He then shot his thumb towards his wife and said, that's Urza-chan, my wife, so you can call her Ka-san. This made Naruto widening his eyes while thinking, are they adopting me? In which Levi answered Naruto's question, yes they are, Naruto. Tsukasa then continued, not only that, you will be able to use a certain armor. This made Naruto to raise an eyebrow, confused by what the destroyer of worlds meant. Tsukasa simply chuckled and looked at Haruto while making a look that said, do it. Haruto sighed and placed a certain ruby-colored ring on his left middle finger. He then suddenly placed his other hand on a buckle with a scanner on it. The belt then suddenly announced. Driver on please. He then flicked a button on the driver and it then announced. Shibatabi touch to Henshin, Shibatabi touch to Henshin. Shibatabi touch to Henshin. Naruto then said Henshin. And flicked his ring to reveal a familiar masked creature. It then happened in a flash when Haruto transformed into an armored creature with a red chestplate, a ruby-like helmet and some braces around the wrists and ankles. This was Kamen Rider Wizard in flame style. Naruto then suddenly announced as he flared his ring, saw, Showtime da. This caused Naruto to widen his eyes in amazement. The boy then looked to his new mother as her armor suddenly transformed as well into a black-colored armor with silver trimming that has silver crosses in several places. It has a revealing silver-edged breastplate and plates flanking her hips that reach down to her waist guard. The waist guard leaves the front of Urza's body exposed, with her groin being covered by a dark imbuement. She has large plates guarding her legs. She has two wings that have black metal arms acting as the wings' leading structure, but the parts used to fly are composed of a membrane-like material. Her hair was also tied in a ponytail. This was her black-winged armor. Urza simply smirked and said, this is my re-equip magic. It allows me to change my armor anytime I want. Though, I'll be teaching you sword fighting. Naruto then yet again widened his eyes while thinking Sugoi. The boy then looked at Tsukasa and Levi to say thank you. But, Tsukasa stopped him and said no wait, we've got more. This made Naruto confused as Tsukasa was about to snap his fingers, only for a strange magic circle appeared out of nowhere and revealed bearded, a black-haired with a streak of white on his hair and blue robes, a red mantle with golden details, a pair of pants that matched the robes and a pair of brown boots. The man then suddenly announced no need to summon me, Tsukasa or my wife too. She'll be here soon. Tsukasa chuckled and said very well, Strange. The man identified as Dr. Strange sighed and said shut up, Tsukasa. Tsukasa then sighed and said hahaha very funny Strange, my name isn't Tsukasa. You want to take this outside? The doctor then said we're already outside, destroyer of worlds Dumbus. In which Naruto raised his hand and said so, he's Mr. Strange. Strange then sighed and said it's Dr. Naruto then did an O gesture and said so you're Mr. Dr. Strange. The Sorcerer Supreme then sighed again and said my name is Stephen Strange. My friends call me Dr. Strange because I used to be an neurosurgeon and I'm the Sorcerer Supreme in my world. And I'm guessing that you're Naruto. Am I right? Cause you look like one. This made Naruto to widen his eyes in amazement at how fast the Sorcerer Supreme spoke. He then blinked and asked while pointing his finger up, can you repeat that, please? Strange just sighed and said blankly no. Naruto then was the one to sigh and suddenly another magic circle appeared out of thin air, but it was pink this time. Which caused Strange to shudder. As a pink-haired lady in a backless dress, the Ron jacket with road-style kikizushi going down to her hands. She also had jacket sleeves covering her hands and a purple bat ring on the right ring finger. She also had a golden ring on her left ring finger. Which meant that she was married. As the very pretty lady came out, she twisted Steven's ear while shouting strange dear, you baka. Leaving Frill and I to take care of the children by ourselves. Good thing we are married or else I would have made sure that we will not have children anymore. The poor sorcerer just did a pained expression and whimpered while saying okay, Meiji Koi. Ah. While everyone else laughed even Naruto who thought that seeing a very masculine sorcerer being forced to listen to their wife's ramblings. Who was shorter, skinnier and smaller compared to him. The mage identified as Meiji then looked at Naruto with widened eyes and ran towards him to pinch his cheeks while squealing out so kawaii. Steven then sighed and said Meiji, let go of Naruto. By that statement alone made Meiji to look at her husband with a shocked look while saying Naruto, as in Naruto Uzumaki. Naruto then raised his hand while shouting can someone tell me what's going on? This made Tsukasa to chuckle and said look Levi and I are giving you a starting in life. A life to break realities and use amazing powers without chakra. Naruto widened his eyes in response. He then said no chakra. Which made Haruto and Urza to speak in unison that in the family you've always wanted. Naruto then started to tear up and his new parents to run up to him to give him a family group hug. A few seconds later, Tsukasa coughed and said also, your training ground house shall be a sanctuary I just built alongside my good friend Kauta Kazuraba. You will be given a sling ring for your basic powers, a wizard river just like your father's, a broken sword that can be used well to stop attacks known as the dragon handle, a Lucha Libre mask that will boost your abilities, a cape that can appear out of thin air that will give you the ability to fly, a spell book that you can use from Meiji's training, a miniature version of the Eye of Agamotto, a staff that can be resized by will called the Power Pole. The pair of twin guns named Ebony and Ivory and finally a pen. This made Naruto to be confused only for Tsukasa to take out a silver ballpoint pen and gave it to Naruto. As Naruto grabbed it in confusion while thinking of what to do, Levi angrily said press the clicker. As Naruto pressed it, the pen turned into a celestial bronze sword. This made everyone there except for Tsukasa and Levi to shout Nani. Strange then stammered Tsukasa, what if Percy find out that you replicated Riptide? Tsukasa chuckled and so did Levi while saying in unison, that kid's got nothing on us as everyone else sighed. Levi snapped his fingers to reveal a giant mansion that is a 3-story Victorian-style brownstone townhouse built in the French Baroque architecture design with a mansard roof. Tsukasa then chuckled and said, this is the exact replica of the Sanctum Sanctorium. So Steven and Meiji, this is a walk in the park for both of you. With that, everyone sighed and went in. As everyone got in, the mansion seems to be more spacious on the interior. Additionally, furniture, doorways, corridors, and even entire rooms will move, creating a labyrinthine distortion of time and space. This made Naruto to widen his in amazement at how well furnished and built the place was. He then explored all the floors of the sanctuary. He noticed that the first floor houses a foyer, a drawing room, a library, a living room, a dining room, and Meiji's kitchen, which Meiji went to slap Tsukasa for replicating everything in such detail. The second floor consists of a study, the Strange's private bedchambers, the Sauma's private bedchambers, a bedchamber for Naruto by his own, and multiple guest quarters. The third floor was composed of the meditation chamber, mystical library, and the storage area for occult artifacts, which kept everything that Naruto was given by Tsukasa and what the original Sanctorium already has. The Window of the Worlds, large window on the third floor, connects to the mediation chamber and is decorated with a pattern of the anomaly rue, the seal of the Vishanti. Finally, in the basement was a storage room, a laundry room, and a magical furnace designed to contain the flames of the Faltine. There is a utility shaft for servicing the furnace that leads from the basement to the third floor meditation chamber. An alleyway on the Feno place leads to a small courtyard and stables where Valkyrie's steed Aragorn is kept. There is also a bathhouse with waters that few mortal beings can survive, a medical recovery chamber inhabited by ghosts, MC Escherian staircases, and several doors acting as gateways to other dimensions. As Naruto finished looking around, he went to sit down on a sofa. While his new parents and his new senseis went to discuss some things with the Destroyer brothers at the kitchen, which Naruto came up with the idea of calling Tsukasa and Levi that. A few minutes later, Tsukasa and Levi got out of the kitchen and Naruto ran up to them to ask something which would surely make everyone there laugh. What Naruto asked was, "Will I get a girlfriend?" This made Tsukasa and Levi to chuckle, and Tsukasa said, "Knew you would say that, so we made sure that she was someone you know, and she happens to be outside of the house as of now." Levi then said, "Anyways, we've gotta go, we can't always ask the other doctor in the telephone booth to fix every world's problems." Tsukasa simply nodded and said while snapping his fingers to reveal a grey glassy wall, "Yup, come on Levi, or else your wife and mine would kill us." With that, both men agreed and disappeared in a glass wall. As it happened, Naruto looked at his new parents with a confused look and asked, "Is that every day for them?" In which Urza answered, "Yes, Sachi-kun. That is totally every day for them." Steven then was about to say something only for Meiji and Haruto to mouth out "No Steven." Which made Steven to just mumble something inaudible. As the others were laughing, there was knock on the door and a voice of a girl shouted, "Hello, is anyone in there?" Naruto then thought, who could it be? Her voice sounded like someone he knew, it was as if Naruto had already met her before. With this, he was about to tell everyone off, but his adopted father beat him to the punch and opened the door to reveal a fair-skinned girl with a slender build. She had brown eyes that were accentuated by her eyelashes extending into the corners of her eyes, and her most distinctive feature was her long, untamed dark pink hair that falls past her shoulders with long parted bangs, framing either side of her face and one between her eyes. Her attire was a black shirt under a tan tunic with elbow-length sleeves and bore the symbol of the Sound 4 on the hem, and black skin-tight shorts. She wore black arm warmers, traditional black shinobi sandals with calf-length leg warmers covered by bandages, and a purple rope-like belt tied in an inverted bow around her waist. This was Tayuya, one of the former members of the Sound 4 and former Kunoichi. While Naruto was thinking of how was she still alive, she said towards Haruto, "I'm sorry, my former master Orochimaru wanted me dead and called a hunter nin to kill me. Right now, I just escaped from his attempt in killing me. Please hide me." With this, Haruto nodded and said sternly, "Get behind Naruto, we'll defend you." She nodded and quickly ran inside, but when she saw Naruto, she shouted, "You?" Naruto simply shushed her and hid her behind him. As she was struggling, Naruto looked at her in the eyes and said, "Look, I know we started at the wrong foot, but now we can't afford to fight each other anymore. Because, I ain't a ninja anymore." This made Tayuya to think, what does he mean he ain't a ninja anymore? For some reason, Naruto could hear her thoughts and replied, "I've been banished from the village for attacking their precious Asuke without reason." The dark pink-haired girl had a shocked expression on her face. As she was about to apologize, a random man in a black tank top, a pair of black tights, a pair of Jounin shoes and a Odo hit I-8 wrapped around his forehead, appeared out of nowhere and shouted towards Haruto, "Hey, have you seen a pink-haired girl around here?" In which Haruto shook his head in denial and said, "No, no one with those features came here." The hunter nin then suddenly took out a tanto and placed the blade on Haruto's neck. A big mistake for his part as Haruto kicked away the tanto and roundhouse kicked the hunter nin in the neck. As the hunter nin fell to the hard concrete floor face first, Urza stomped on the poor man's neck and Meiji decided to cast a spell on the man, which was a temporary blinding spell, so that Strange could do his part. With the chance, Strange suddenly opened a portal to the underworld which made both Naruto and Tayuya to have an admiring look plastered on their faces. As this happened, Haruto and Urza threw the man into it. Strange and Meiji then closed the portal and the hunter nin was gone for good. Seeing everything that just escalated, Naruto had a new promise that he will be the strongest sorcerer of the elemental nations. 2 years later. We now see Naruto and Tayuya sleeping in their shared private bedchambers naked thanks to their intimate activities. Why? Because they realized that they had feelings for each other a year ago and got married in the Sanctorium. Not only that, Naruto changed not only mentally and emotionally but physically as well. Gon was the spiky-haired boy. Now he had a messy yet curly hair and he was taller than the brat he used to be. This was because Urza and Meiji forced him to get in a diet. He was allowed to have ramen, but only once a week, which made him upset at first, but then complied. Not only that, he had lost his old orange kill me jumpsuit and now wears what his father would wear, only with flame-patterned black khakis, a red shirt that had the caption of King of Strong Style at the front and Yeo at the back. He also had a black jacket that faded from black to white from the top to bottom. He also wears the mini-sized version of the Eye of Agamotto around his neck alongside a Wizard River in scanner form on his belt. Naruto also had learned everything from the 4 sorcerer mage wizards in a matter of 2 years, which led to Strange and Meiji to leave this world so that they could take care of their children in their world and to make sure that Meiji's familiar, Frill, won't go through hell. Taya changed as well. Just like Naruto, she decided to stop her life as a ninja and switched it to become a mage just like Meiji. In which, the Mage of Supremacy complied and made Taya her personal student. She was now wearing an outfit that was topped by a red hooded cloak fastened to her shoulders by cross-shaped pins and a black skirt with red floral designs. Which made her to look absolutely stunning in Naruto's eyes. She also got curvy just like Urza, which made both Haruto and Naruto to widen their eyes when they heard the news. Anyways, back to the story, Naruto woke up with the sight of Taya laying her head on Naruto's chest still asleep. Which Naruto sighed and slowly got up from the bed to make sure that his wife wouldn't wake up, but to his dismay, she did and said, Naruto-kun, just lay down for a few more minutes. Naruto shook his head while saying, I can't because I fear Kachan might burn the kitchen down. This made his wife to sigh and said, fine, come on, let's get dressed and get ourselves ready for the day. With that, Naruto nodded and the couple got dressed in bathrobes. Naruto's was red while Taya's was white. They then quickly went downstairs to the dining room to see that Haruto was the one cooking and Urza just reading a newspaper that she summoned by snapping her fingers. As the young couple got there, Urza smiled and went to give her son a kiss on the cheek. She then said, morning Sachi-kun, how are you today? The 15-year-old boy simply blushed at his adopted mother's gesture and said, morning Ka-chan, what's Tu-chan cooking today? The mother simply sighed and said, miso ramen. Which if Naruto was still the dumb brat he used to be, he would have shouted out yada. But since he isn't, he just said, oh, I see. With that, the young couple took a seat next to each other and waited for their meal. Suddenly, a knocking sound was heard on the door, which was very rare as Strange always told them that the Sanctorium can only be seen by magic wielders and they've checked that no one from the outside can use magic. With this, everyone got ready by snapping and their equipment were instantly equipped. Haruto then decided he should be the one to open the door, only to reveal a certain pink head and her teammates, who were exactly the people who made his life a living hell before leaving Konoha. Sakura Haruno, Rock Lee, Ino Yamanaka, Hinata and Niji Hyuga. As the group of Chunins opened the door, Niji as team captain said, is this the Sanctum Sanctorium? If so, then we would need help in finding an ex-shinobi of ours. Naruto, interested, quickly leaned nearer to the Hyuga and asked who might that be, Hyuga-san. As Niji was about to answer, Hinata spoke up and Naruto Uzumaki. With that, Haruto nodded and shouted, Naruto, someone wants to see you. Naruto, still getting his weapons prepared, simply went to the front door and what he saw made him feel very angry. As he saw his former friends, Hinata eeped while blushing and the others were amazed at how well built he got in 2 years. Naruto then sighed, walked up to them and said in a cold tone, what do you want? In which they flinched at the tone given by the new Sorcerer Supreme. Lee then tried to make the atmosphere better by saying, why hello Naruto-kun, how youthful have you become, but was interrupted by Naruto's hands suddenly going up to the Chunin's throat to strangle him while shouting, you have no say at how well I have become since you decided to beat me up on the day of my rehab. Sakura then tried to say something, but Naruto turned towards her and said, you just wouldn't stop, but to, bleep, Sasuke's, bleep, and the same goes for you Ino. Said girls simply put their head down in shame. Niji then tried to say something only for a fist from Naruto to go up to his face. Naruto didn't say anything as he repeatedly punched Niji in the face. As he was done, he turned towards Hinata and said finally, you the bleep of the Hyugas. Main branch my bleep. You are nothing more than a burden to your family and don't you dare try and think that I will forgive you and go out together. Because, I am happily married with a stunning woman. This caused a poor Hyuga girl to feel heartbroken and teared up. With this, Naruto took a deep breath and asked, so, why do you need to search me for? Niji, who had multiple bruises and cuts on his face, said in a beaten up tone, Konoha needs you back. In which Naruto said PSSH, as if. It was then Sakura who answered, it's not Tsunade-sensei's orders, it's your father's. Which made the whole family including Urza and Taya, who went to see what was going on, to widen their eyes in unison. Chapter 2. Return to Konoha. A few minutes later. Naruto sighed as Niji finished everything that he needed to know. To him, it was too much for him to take in. His family wasn't dead but abandoned him so that they could train his twin sister simply because of her having the yin chakra. Well, he used to have the yang up until the day he was supposed to be banished. At first he didn't know what to think of his biological family. They were either really stupid or really reckless. The moment they got back, they tried to find their son brother, only to be informed by Tsunade that he was banished from Konoha. Neji then told them about Konoha's condition, in which Naruto simply smirked as he heard that Konoha's alliance with Wave had burned in shambles the moment they heard the news of Naruto being banished. It then caused a quite big number of other allied countries to even call their alliance off. Though, Suna decided that they could still trade goods and aid each other in battle. As this went on, Konoha had started to realize that their alliances usually happen thanks to Naruto, and they were also shocked that Naruto was also the son of their caused everyone that attacked him on the day of his recovery and banishment to feel very quilty. Not only that, Sasuke actually ran away to Orochimaru yet again and no one could have stopped him. Which caused the council's condition to be in shambles. A year later, he came back with a new type of Sharingan called the Manjikyu. This was because he had succeeded in avenging his clan by killing Itachi, but then realized that Itachi did it for the sake of the village. Which made Sasuke to return to Konoha with open arms, but a snarl from Minato and his family, Kakashi, Shizune, Tsunade and Jiraiya. Even Shikamaru, Shino, Kiba, Tenten and Choji didn't exactly like him being around. Though, he still had a stick shoved up his butt. Other than that, Minato, who decided to take over as Hokage again, called out a lot of ninjas to find his son. The only one who went so far just to find Naruto was Kakashi, who ended up with nothing but broken bones. This went on for the next 2 years up until Minato found out about a boy in blonde hair who doesn't use chakra in the bingo books, who lives near the Valley of the End in a mansion, who goes by the nickname of the Sorcerer Supreme of the Elemental Nations. And here they were sitting at a coffee table having tea at the supposed place, only to find out that Naruto owned it. With this, Naruto sighed and said, "So, my father wants me back so that he thinks that he could reconcile with me, which chances of happening are very subatomic, and so that more alliances with other villages may happen, is that why?" Sakura shook her head and said, "Not only that, but to also bring you back as a shinobi. Don't you want that?" Naruto simply shook his head in response and said, "I don't see why I should, as all 4 of you are now lower than trash," which caused all 3 Chunins and the Jounin to flinch at the statement. Hinata feeling the most of it. The Sorcerer Supreme then continued, "However, I am not a bad man. I will return to Konoha, but in these conditions." With this, Neji nodded and said, "Very well, what might they be, Namikaze-san?" This caused Naruto to glare at the still recovering Hyuga and said, "Don't call me by that wretched name. I'm a Sama now. Anyways, here are my conditions. Firstly, I will bring my family there. My adopted one, my wife included. Secondly, I would like to have a proper trial about my fight with Sasuke at the Valley of the End. Finally, once that trial is over, I would like to have my own clan named the Sama clan, and the compound will be the Sanctum Sanctorium. Will that be fine?" This shocked every Konohanin in the room, thinking that Naruto was insane and a lost cause. With this, Sakura placed a hand on her kunai pouch, only for her said hand to be restrained by some sort of chain. Sakura tried to struggle free as quiet as possible, but failed miserably as she saw Naruto smirking, while saying, "Look, I did say I ain't a bad guy. So please tell me, Haruno, why did you try to throw a kunai on my temple?" This shocked the Konohanins again, especially Sakura, who thought he can read minds. With this, Naruto sighed and said, "Yeah, I can read everyone's minds. Now, do you really want me back to Konoha or not?" Not knowing what to do, Neji quickly spoke up, "Naruto, please let go of Sakura, and yes, we need you back." Naruto simply clapped his hands in response, and the chain released Sakura's wrist from its grip. As it left Sakura's wrist, it left a huge gash on her wrist. The magical chain then disappeared in a flash of light, which caused the Konohanins to jaw drop. Naruto then got up from the table and said, "Anyways, finish your tea and I will need to inform my new family about this agreement. After I'm done, we'll set our way to Konoha. Is that okay?" As Neji was about to nod, Naruto disappeared in a flash of light, which shocked everyone and thought at the same time, how did he do that without chakra? Meanwhile, with Naruto at the dining room, Taya quickly ran up to him to give her husband a hug, while saying, "Is everything okay, Naruto-koi? What do those Konoha shitheads want?" But this, Naruto chuckled and said, "No matter how much you've changed, you still call people with that name. But apparently, Konoha needs me back so badly that my father decided to send his ninjas just to find me and thinks that he can reconcile with me." Taya had a confused look and said, "I thought they said that they would be better without you." Naruto shook his head in response and said, "Apparently, I've caused a lot of alliances between Konoha and a lot of villages and countries. They also found out that I am the son of the Yellow Flash, which made them think that I should be treated as royalty." But this, Taya simply nodded and asked, "So, did you agree to return?" Naruto sighed and said, "You know who I am, I ain't a bad guy. If someone needs me, I'll be there. however, I did put some conditions. Taya interested quickly asked what are they, then? Naruto slumped his shoulders and said I told them that I will bring Tu-chan, Ka-chan and you there as well. Then, I told them that I would like to have a proper trial about my fight with the team at the Valley of the End. My final condition is that once the trial is over, I would like to have my own clan named the Samba clan, and the compound will be this very mansion. Taya simply smirked and said when I first met you, you were dumb and hot-headed. But when I got to know you, I realized that you are pretty smart after all. She then took Naruto's hand, bit on his index finger seductively and said in a suggestive tone, and it's turning me on so badly. But this, Naruto's face turned red and was about to say something only to be interrupted by his adoptive mother who said so, are we really going there with those conditions, Sachi? Naruto simply nodded and then realized that he needed a lawyer, but thankfully Haruto said don't worry, we know the #1 ace attorney of the multiverse and the best detective in the multiverse. This made Urza to look at Haruto with an O. Look and said so you want to call them Urvia Tsukasa. Naruto shook his head and said nah, I think boss will inform him soon. He always know when we need something that cannot be done. This made Naruto and Taya to wonder who was this boss. Because, Haruto and Urza would always tell them about how strong this boss. About how the man can push up but he actually pushes the world down, how he can run around the world and still be able to be quick enough to punch himself in the back of his head. Back to the story, Urza nodded and said very well, I guess we are set to go. With this, Naruto nodded and went back to the living room in a magic circle. As he appeared, he saw that Neji was interested at Naruto's books that he left on the coffee table, Lee was shouting about youth while the girls just facepumped. Naruto then sighed and said, we're good to go. Neji, still confused on how Naruto would bring the Sanctorium to Konoha asked how are you going to bring this mansion there? Naruto simply chuckled and said like this. He quickly snapped his fingers and suddenly everyone in the mansion felt vibration from the floor to the ceiling. As it happened, everyone suddenly started floating the air except for the Sorcerer Supreme and the other magicians who stood on the ground as if it was nothing. This went on for quite a while and Neji shouted how are you doing this? Naruto smiled while taking out a random book to read and said, with a new source of energy called mana and the power of my spirit. As it happened, Taya came downstairs with a really. Look. With this, Naruto smiled while wrapping his arms around her waist and said Gamin Taya-chan, I can't help it. Taya simply sighed and said well, I did marry you. So, I can't complain. The moment the Konohans heard the married part, Neji still flouting shouted what? Isn't she an enemy? The Sorcerer Supreme simply shook his head while still having one of his arms around Taya's and said, not anymore. Anyways we should be there in 10. This made the Konohans to wonder and Sakura shouted 10 what? Hours, minutes. Naruto then looked at his wrist as if there was a watch unwrapped around it and said 987,654,321. Suddenly, the vibration came to an abrupt stop and the Konohans dropped flat on their faces on top of the concrete floor. This made Naruto and Taya laugh their butts off and Naruto said, it's always funny when that happens. Oh well, that was one of the best landings that I have ever seen. But this, the Konohans got up while dusting themselves and Lee said are we at Konoha now? Naruto simply nodded and said, you can open the door and see a bunch of jaw drops. Hinata, who was the closest to the door quickly opened it and saw that almost the whole population of Konoha were jaw-dropping at the sight of the Sanctorium suddenly dropping in the middle of Konoha. As she was about to address them off, a couple of Anbu appeared in a shunshin and said what is this, Chunin Hinata? Hinata gulped and muttered out the Sanctum Sanctorium in its SSS glory. The Ambus were simply amazed at how this 3-storied mansion managed to suddenly poofed out of nowhere. As the Konohans got out, the magic users followed closely behind them. As the citizens saw Naruto, they cheered in glee, but Naruto said shush. In which they did and Naruto shouted while putting his arms up as if he was thanking Kami while saying spotlight. Out of nowhere, a random ray of spotlight appeared on Naruto's body and then he shouted glorious. Use glorious domination by CFO $. Naruto then placed his arm around Taya's waist and walked towards the crowd with Haruto and Urza following just behind them while holding hands. They then set their way towards the Hokage Tower. Most of the civilians went up to Naruto to shake hands or pat him on the back as if they were old friends which pissed him off for a short while and tried to call them off but decided against as Taya looked at him with a no. Look. They then continued making their way to the tower with no casualties as anyone who tried to flirt with either Haruto or Urza were shut down thanks to the couple showing their wedding rings. End song. Hokage Tower. As they got to the front door and Naruto was about to knock, he hesitated for a while and whispered to his family I can't do this, Taya Koi, Tauchan, Kachan, I just don't know what to say. Naruto chuckled as he placed a hand on Naruto's head and ruffled his hair while saying Naruto, who are we? Naruto did a thinking pose for a while up until he remembered something and said, we are Saumas. We find hope or we become the final hope. Urza smiled at her husband, wrapped both of her arms on one of his and said, just like how you found hope for my guild to fight for peace. Haruto smiled at the memory and said if it wasn't for Tsukasa, I would never have met you. He made the right call when he asked me for help in your world. Naruto smiled as well as he remembered the stories that has been told by his adopted father and mother. Tsukasa Kadoya was apparently the Sekai no Hakeshi and so was his brother, only more strict and shorter. They traveled through a lot of worlds alongside their wives, friends and children to solve problems that are not applicable in other worlds. One of those worlds was his adopted mother's, the fairy tale world, where magic is very common and a bunch of guild were created so that they could solve some of the world's problems. But when Tsukasa and the crew got there, they realized that none of them really knew about magic. So rather than calling a guy in glasses with a thunderbolt scar on the left side of his forehead and the Sorcerer Supreme, they decided to call Haruto. With that, they created a power couple of magic, Haruto and Urza, which surprised the gang by a huge margin, but since Koyomi was dead and she actually said to Haruto via telepathy to move on from her. It was a harsh day for Haruto on that day. Then came Haruto's call to fairy tale, and the rest was history. Back to the story, Naruto took a deep breath and knocked on the door. A voice of a man then was heard that said enter. Naruto then turned to doorknob to see the yellow flash in his form of glory. Alongside him was Tsunade and Jiraiya who acted as advisors. For some reason, Shizune wasn't present, which raised some questions for the 15-year-old boy. As Naruto entered, Jiraiya widened his eyes and muttered, "And Naruto, is that you?" This made Minato and Tsunade to widen their eyes, while Naruto nodded and said with a smile, "It's been a while, Eiro-senin." The Toad Senin then quickly ran up to the boy to hug him, in which the boy gladly returned it. They stayed there for a while up until Minato cleared his throat and said, "Jiraiya-sensei, please let go of my son." As Jiraiya let go of Naruto, Haruto barged in with anger and shouted towards Naruto, "Your son? What do you mean by that?" Minato was shocked at the sight of the ringed wizard and asked, "Who might you be?" Naruto then sighed and said, "This is Haruto-sama, my adopted father, or rather my only father." This made Tsunade, Jiraiya and Minato to widen their eyes, and Minato said, "What do you mean he's your only father?" "I am." Naruto shook his head and said, "You have no right to call him your son. After you abandoned him, I don't think you can call him that." Minato flinched at this and said, "My wife and I needed to train Natsumi more as her prisoner was more stable compared to him. That's why we left him." As Haruto was about to retort, Urza and Taya came in and Urza shouted, "That is the dumbest reason I have ever heard coming from a man's mouth. How can you even call yourself a father?" This got Minato and the others to feel confused as well, except for Jiraiya who had hearts on his eyes, and Tsunade asked, "Who might the both of you be?" Urza snorted and said, "HMPH. I'm Urza-sama, Naruto's rightful mother and Haruto-kun's wife." While Taya said, "I'm Taya-sama, Naruto's wife." This made all three nins to shout in unison, "Nani." A few seconds later, Jiraiya took out a notepad and started jotting down some things with a perverted giggle, only for Haruto to place his ringed hand on his scanner and it announced, "Connect please." The red magic circle then appeared next to Haruto and he placed his left hand in it. As such, another magic circle appeared next to the notepad's area to reveal Haruto's hand, which snatched the notepad away. As it happened, Tsunade, Jiraiya and Minato had one thought: what just happened? Haruto then took a read on the book and had a very red face. He then cleared his throat and said, "Umiro-senin, please don't put my wife into your disgusting books. I mean, I know that she has a body that many would die for, but she's still my wife." As Jiraiya was about to deny it, Urza literally ran up with Jounin speed towards Jiraiya, with her trusty sword's edge on his throat, while saying, "What did you just write about me?" Jiraiya gulped in horror and said, "About your body." As he finished the sentence, Urza raised her blade and was about to slash him, only for Naruto who shouted, "Kachan, don't. Konoha needs us, so by killing Iro-senin, they will think that we are enemies. I mean the Sanctorium is fine and all, but I do miss Konoha a lot." Urza sighed and sheathed her blade while saying, "Very well, Sachi-kun." This made Minato to feel a bit tad jealous while thinking, if only I didn't abandon him, Kushina and I would have been just like them. Naruto then took a seat and said, "Anyways, Konoha needs me, right?" In which, Minato nodded and Naruto continued, "So, I would like to have some conditions." Minato, interested, then asked, "Very well, what may they be?" Naruto simply nodded and said, "My first condition is that my family will come to Konoha alongside me, which is already done. Then, my second condition is that I would like to have a trial on the battle at the Valley of the End with a team to help me find my innocence in the event. If you can you do the trial at the council room? And finally, a new clan called the Sama clan, which has a very unique bloodline called magic, where clan members instead of using chakra uses mana to do attacks, defense and stuff that chakra users can't use. The compound will be the Sanctum Sanctorium, which I brought on the journey back here." This made Minato, Tsunade and Jiraiya widen their eyes, but obliged that this may be the only chance that Konoha can have Naruto back. As Minato agreed to the conditions, Naruto then got up, clapped his hands and said wonderful, I expect to have that trial in 2 hours time. Now if you don't mind, I would like to give my family a tour. Naruto then snapped his fingers and his new family and him disappeared in flash of light. Minato then smashed his hand on his table and thought I've fucked up big time. Back to Naruto, his family and him used some sort of magic to transport the Sanctorium to an undesignated spot which was near the Forest of Death. But since they were kind of used to living near a forest, they didn't mind. As they finished moving it, they realized that they had approximately 1 hour and 45 minutes until the trial starts. So with a chance, Haruto gave a very suggestive smile towards Urza, and the married couple went to their bedchambers to do that. Naruto then sighed and said to his wife, what should we do now, Taya-chan? Taya slumped her shoulders and said let's play chess. Naruto simply nodded as it was better than nothing after all their score in chess was 200-199 in his favor and summoned a random chess set so that they could play. After a grueling match and a few minutes later, they find themselves to somehow manage to tie by having only their kings on the board. With this, they sighed and decided to walk around the village for a tour. On the tour, Naruto realized that Konoha hasn't really changed much other than a few things here and a few things there. It really hasn't changed much. Then, as Naruto and his wife was about to reach Ichiraku's as their final stop, a familiar voice was heard from behind. This made Naruto's face brightened up and turned around to see his former sensei Kakashi and Shizune standing in all their glory. With this, Naruto ran up to Kakashi and hugged the jounin. Kakashi gave his eye smile and ruffled the boy's hair while saying geez Naruto, you've gotten taller and your spiky hair is now non-existent. How did that happen? As Naruto let go and was about to answer, Taya answered he was given a very intense workout regimen by his dear master that caused his hair to suddenly look like that. Kakashi simply nodded and Shizune asked who might you be? Taya bowed and said sorry, where are my manners? I'm Taya-sama, Naruto's lawfully wedded wife, and both of you must be Kakashi-sensei and Shizune-nichan that Naruto's been telling me about. This made the jounin couple to widen their eyes in unison, and Naruto said yeah, I realized that she needed me as much as I needed her. Thus, we got married. Kakashi gave Naruto an eye smile and gave him a thumbs up, while Shizune nodded and gave Taya a smile. They then decided to go to Ichiraku's so that they could catch up. As they got there, Tucci was there to greet them, but when he saw Naruto, he jumped of joy and went to the back while shouting AM, come to the front. There is someone you need to see. AM then came out while grumbling Tucson, I don't want marry anyone. I already have a boyfriend but stopped her sentence and went to hug the blonde over the counter while saying welcome back, Naruto. Naruto chuckled and said yeah, it's good to be back. Anyways, AM Nichan. The usual for Taya-chan and IAM and Tucci simply nodded and got into making ramen. As the pair was cooking, Naruto told Kakashi and Shizune about what happened after he was banished. Tsukasa and Levi suddenly saving him. How he found his new family and source of power. He also told them about how he managed to find himself to get over his ramen addiction, how he became the Sorcerer Supreme under Doctor Strange and Meiji's training, and how he got himself married to the most stunning woman he ever laid his eyes on. Which caused Taya to blush hard. When he finished his story, Kakashi and Shizune looked at each other in disbelief while thinking this Tsukasa Kadoya, who is he? But then again, Naruto could read minds and said Tsukasa is a time and space lord who just happened to pass through here that day. With this, Kakashi nodded in defeat while Shizune was still wondering who was this Tsukasa Kadoya. As AM finished making the bowls and served them, Naruto instantly ate it or rather consumed it and said geez, I miss this so much. With this, everyone laughed and so did Naruto. As everyone finished eating, they decided to catch up and Naruto was shocked that not only was Kakashi and Shizune married, but Shizune just confirmed that she was 3 months pregnant as well. They then finished doing what they were doing and the jounin couple decided to get home. As they left, Taya said you were in good hands before you were banished. That's good. As Naruto nodded, an Anbu ninja appeared in a shunshin and said Naruto Namikaze, you are now needed in the council room. Naruto then nodded while gritted his teeth by the mention of his non-existent surname and grabbed Taya's hand, which caused the Anbu to feel a bit confused, only to witness the married couple to disappear in a flash of light. The Anbu nin then blinked his eyes for a moment and muttered huff I'm getting old for this shit. Council room. To say that council room's condition was in disarray was an understatement. It was a total riot in there especially the civilians. To hear that the demon boy has returned was a complete outrage and hearing that he had conditions was a bigger problem for Danzo and his plans. Minato sighed and shouted keep quiet. With that, the civilians kept quiet and the main door suddenly opened to reveal Naruto alongside his wife. To the boy's memory, the council room looked a bit different but now it looked like a courtroom. But he didn't think much about it as he was forced to create a magic force field for him and his wife to shield them from rotten tomatoes being thrown towards them. Minato then cleared his throat and hit his gavel on the main table while saying court is now in session. The trial is about whether Naruto the defendant is really guilty for attacking Sasuke. As Minato finished talking, Danzo who acted as prosecutor said Hokage-sama, if I may. The defendant still did in fact assault my client Sasuke during their meeting at the Valley of the End. Not only that, he still used the Kyuubi's chakra just to injure my client. As he finished his statement, Naruto clenched his fist while thinking seriously, was that what the team told this damn council? That is all but the truth. Not only that, but the civilians are agreeing to what that old warhick said. Minato then nodded and said okay, any objections from the defense? As Naruto was about to open his mouth, the main door suddenly opened to reveal a spiky black-haired man that was combed to the back, who looked as if he was in his mid-30s, who was also wearing a white dress shirt, a single-breasted royal blue suit, and a red fuchsia tie that was tied around his collar. Everyone were simply surprised at the sudden appearance, and as Minato was about to say something, the man simply shouted while pointing his index finger outward objection. This made Naruto to think wait, this is Phoenix right? The best attorney of all time. The man who was now identified as Phoenix suddenly took out the Konoha's updated lawbook and said according to the lawbook, council members who doesn't respect the Hokage's orders shall be stripped down out of power. So Danzo Shimura, why are you still a council member? Danzo kept a straight face, but deep down he was panicking wait, how does this man know about Root still being active? Phoenix then went to defense table and said you know what I'm talking about, does Root ring any bells? For some reason, Danzo went flying backwards by a huge gust of wind just after Phoenix pointed his finger. This made everyone to somehow be amazed by this blue-suited person, and Minato asked, who are you? Phoenix simply bowed an apology and was about to introduce himself only for a tall, svelte man, appearing no more than in his late 30s, with pale skin and dark curly hair. His outfit consists of a long ulster coat, the collar spiked up and a dark blue scarf barging in, and said he's Phoenix Wright, Naruto's attorney. Hughes, the game is on. Phoenix simply smiled and said it's nice to see you Sherlock. Seems the boss summoned you too. Though, I prefer the professor. The man now identified as Sherlock sighed as he placed his arms in his pockets and said, don't be like that, right? After all he then placed both of hands in front of his mouth while looking intensely towards Danzo who was still getting up and said the game is on. End song. Chapter 3. The trial and Naruto's compensation. A few minutes later. Danzo was seen clutching his chest in frustration as Phoenix kept giving evidence that Root was still active and why it was relevant to the case. But what Phoenix presented next sealed the deal. Phoenix simply shouted. Take that. Suddenly, a piece of paper was seen on Phoenix's hands that made Danzo sweat bullets. With this, Minato asked Right-san, what is that? Phoenix simply smirked and said this happens to be a note written by Danzo himself for the capture of the Baron of Bluffing, then slapped both of his hands on the table and shouted while pointing an accusing finger towards Danzo Naruto after the boy's banishment. Hughes cornered Phoenix right ost. This caused everyone to gasp and a lot of shouting was heard. In retaliation, Danzo shouted objection, Hokage-sama. This but was interrupted by Sherlock who said from the sudden gulp to your sweat on your hands, I can deduce that Root is still indeed. The only consultant detective and Phoenix simply slammed a hand onto the table, stood back to back while pointing their fingers towards Danzo and said active. This made Danzo to stay quiet for a while, only to feel a giant gust of wind blowing towards and he was propelled backwards. But this, Phoenix shouted no alibi. No justice. No dreams. No hope. It's time for you to pay for your crimes, Danzo Shimura. As Danzo got up again, Minato quickly asked Danzo, is this true? If so, then you have committed treason. Danzo, being someone who does not give up easily, finally sighed in defeat and said, it's all true Hokage-sama. End of song. But this, a man from the crowd did a slow clap which continued with everyone else as watching two outsiders doing what most people in Konoha couldn't do. Exposing Danzo Shimura and defeating him in such a fashion. As the waves of claps stopped, Minato nodded and was about to ask Samambus to take Danzo away, only for the said mummy to smirk and shouted Root. All of a sudden, a large number of Root ninjas appeared in Shunshuns. With this, Minato asked Danzo, what is the meaning of this? Danzo simply chuckled and said it's time for change in Kono, but was interrupted by Phoenix and Sherlock laughing, and Sherlock said do you honestly think that we wouldn't bring some backup? Just how low are you? You are so predictable. As Danzo got confused of what Sherlock meant by backup, a giant blue blast literally destroyed most of his units. With this, everyone started to search for its source only to find a short skeleton with a shit-eating smile and large orbits. He wears an unzipped blue hoodie, a white t-shirt, black shorts with white stripes, and a pair of sneakers standing on top of a device that resemble a skull. The skeleton then chuckled, sorry I'm late Sherlock. Frisk wouldn't stop asking for chocolates as she's in her 4th month, I literally had to work myself to the bone. Tsh. This made everyone to groan including Naruto and Taya who thought in unison, so this is the powerful, but yet can only take one hit Sans that 2 San Haruto-sensei couldn't even beat. Sherlock then frowned and shouted, not the time for puns, Sans. With this, Sans chuckled and then looked at Danzo with none of his pupils being seen on both of his sockets. The skeleton then said it's a beautiful day outside. Birds are singing, flowers are blooming. On days like these, guys like you. Sans' left eye then flashes light of blue and yellow and continued should be burning in hell. Hugh's megalovania. As the root ninjas were preparing for some sort of attack, they didn't expect themselves to be thrown out of the room and to suddenly be stabbed through the spine by a barrage of bones. Danzo, not knowing what to do, quickly unwrapped his bandages to reveal his Sharingans and the Shodame's bloodline. The sight made everyone in the room to almost vomit. Danzo then quickly tried to control or brainwash Sans, only for the skeleton to sigh and said, this is one of the reasons that I despise people like you, and trust me, I have killed many of Danzo's before, thanks to Tsukasa. But nonetheless you are lower than trash, aren't ya? You would sacrifice anyone else so that you could achieve your goals, and bad ones at that. This made Danzo to ask in disbelief how. What? Sherlock then smiled and said the Sharingan only works on people who have chakra. Thus, doing it on Sans is rather useless. As Danzo widened his normal eye, Sans said, well Danzo, the clock has ticked and it said you had a bad time. So, your judgment shall be. Sans then paused for a while as a magic circle appeared in thin air to reveal Dr. Strange in his glory. End of song. Strange sighed and said, Sans, I'll take care of the judgment. You can go back to your wife. She's a handful, especially when she's pregnant. Sans simply chuckled and said, well I really need to get back then. See you later Sherlock with facial hair. Sans then looked towards Naruto and said also, nice seeing you Naruto. Haruto wouldn't stop reporting at how good your training has helped you. But this, Strange and Sherlock sighed as Sans suddenly disappeared in thin air and Strange said, damn you Sans, you of all people should know that Sherlock and I are universal twins. Strange then looked at Danzo and said, you are the lowest of the low. As the almighty Sorcerer Supreme, I banish you to hell where your soul belongs to the Reaper and vengeance shall be scorpions. Danzo then got confused and Strange quickly made a portal to the underworld right under the trader's feet so that Danzo could fall into it. In a flash, Strange closed it up inside. The Sorcerer Supreme then announced, I'll be assisting the prosecution. Now, let us proceed with the trial. Strange then quickly got himself into the prosecution table and said, by the way, I am Dr. Stephen Strange. But this, Minato nodded as everyone else were shocked to see how powerful the last 2 sudden appearances were compared to Danzo who had multiple Sharingans. Strange then cleared his throat and said the prosecution would like to call the victim, Sasuke Uchiha, to the stand for his testimony of the events. But this, the said Uchiha did HN. And Sunshine to the stand. As he got there, he said, fine, but so you know this is the defense's lost. Everything I say is definitely what happened. Minato simply sighed at this and said, just go on with the testimony. Witness testimony. Sasuke simply did another HN. And said. When Naruto and I met each other at the Valley of the End. He told me that I should come back and I said sure. But all of a sudden he used the Kyuubi's chakra to punch me in the face. In retaliation, I quickly shoved a Chidori in the chest and all of you know what happened next. End of testimony. Minato nodded at this and said, right San, Holmes-san, would you like to have your cross-examination now? But this, Phoenix smirked and simply said sure, Hokage-sama. Cross-examination. Sasuke simply did another HN. And said. When Naruto and I met each other at the Valley of the End. He told me that I should come back and I said sure. Objection. Everyone then looked at Phoenix who smirked and said, Hokage-sama, that is a contradiction. You see, I happen to have a recording of some sort when Naruto asked Sasuke to come back. But this, Minato nodded and said, very well, please show us the recording. Phoenix nodded and looked at Strange who nodded in agreement. Strange then opened another portal to show what really happened. The moment they saw Sasuke retaliating, everyone groaned and thought that Naruto was really innocent after all. Sasuke then shouted, Hokage-sama, you can't believe that, can you? That's just a genjutsu, but was interrupted by Haruto who smacked the Uchiha in the back of the head while saying, know your place Gaki. He's the Sorcerer Supreme, stronger than all 5 of your Hokages combine. This shocked everyone except for Minato who had a stone face, but in the inside he solemnly nodded. With this, Sasuke flinched and Sherlock said, from your face of guilt. I can tell that you definitely had the intent to kill Naruto. Don't count Taya as she was just following orders from that snake. So Sasuke, what will it be? Denying that I am right or telling the truth? Sasuke sighed at this and said, it's true, it's all true. But this, Minato nodded and said then I am ready to give my sentence that Naruto na Sama is dropped of all charges and may give more conditions for his stay here. Court is now adjourned. The Hokage then slammed his gavel and everyone else left the room except for Naruto, Taya, Phoenix, Sherlock, Strange, Haruto and Urza. But this, Minato asked what do you need, Naruto? Naruto simply cleared his throat and said Hokage-sama, I was wondering if you could pay for the reward. Minato was confused at this and said reward, what do you mean? Haruto chuckled and said well, Naruto did come here and he was technically captured and he's in the bingo books and he did come here willingly. So, you kinda have to pay him the reward. But this, Minato sighed and said how much is it then? As Naruto flipped the pages to his page from an updated bingo book so that he could show it to his sperm donor, Minato clutched his chest and said 10 billion ryo. That is more than anyone in this book combined. Naruto simply shook his finger and said well you gotta do what you gotta do, Hokage-sama. With this, Minato sighed and said very well, I'll transfer the money into your account if you would like. But this, Naruto nodded and said thank you, but not only that, you see one of your ninjas tried to kill me, which I'm pretty sure that's not what you ordered her to do, right? Minato was shocked at this for a while, but then sighed and said let me guess, it's the Haruno. I think Sasuke asked her to kill you just in case you wouldn't cooperate. Naruto nodded at this and said you're correct, Hokage-sama. You see on the way here, Urza and I found a piece of paper that belonged to the Uchiha who ordered that Naruto should be executed on the spot. Minato sighed and said do you have the piece of paper? Urza then went up to the Hokage and placed the piece of paper on the table, while saying in a harsh tone here you go. Minato then picked it up and went to read it. What he read shocked him. Sakura. If you love me, then kill Naruto if he doesn't cooperate to come back to the village. If you do it, then maybe I'll consider going out with you. Sasuke. Minato growled at this, and Naruto said so as compensation, I would like to have an additional 500,000 ryo into my back account and a match with Sasuke Uchiha, Sakura Haruno, Rock Lee, Ino Yamanake, Niji and Hinata Hyuga at the same time tomorrow morning at 9. If I beat them, my wife and I will get Jounin status with no questions asked. Minato was reluctant at first, but solemnly nodded and said fine if that's what you want. With this, Naruto nodded and everyone other than Minato left the room. As they left, Minato sighed and thought I have fucked everything up. Back to Naruto, Strange sent Phoenix and Sherlock back home and the 5 magicians went to the Sanctorium via portal. As they reached there, Strange was simply impressed by how well Saumas have kept the place clean and said even Gandalf would be okay with how well all of you took care of it after our last visit. But this, the Saumas rubbed their necks while sheepishly smiled. Naruto then said anyways sensei, why are you here? Not saying that I'm not glad of you being here, but why? Strange smiled at this and said well, boss decided to ask me to come here. So here I am. Also, I just wanted to see my apprentice and tell Meiji of how powerful you've become. But this, Naruto nodded and said well, I mastered 2 sense Taijutsu, Ka-sense Kenjutsu, Meiji sensei's spells and everything you've taught me. So, what else do I need? Strange simply smirked at this and said good thing that you weren't trained by Dr. Fate or else he would have shut you up. Naruto cringed at this as he remembered when he first met the said man, while the other Saumas laughed at the memory. Strange then sighed and said anyways, I gotta go. Nice seeing you again, Haruto, Urza. The magic user squad is really boring without the both of you and I really can't handle Loki anymore, especially when he decided to have a fight with sweet little Megumin and well explosion happened. This made the Saumas to laugh and Haruto said can't promise you anything Strange. Can't Gandalf or Maleficent do anything about it? The Sorcerer Supreme sighed and said Gandalf's senile and only shouts you shall not pass. And Maleficent doesn't really want to teach her husband to know his place. But this, the Sauma family simply chuckled. All of a sudden, a knock was heard on the door and the atmosphere got super tensed. As quick as lightning, Naruto opened the door to reveal his older brother figure, Haruka Yamino. The Chunin didn't look like he aged a day after Naruto's banishment. With this, Naruto quickly hugged his academy instructor and said Haruka-sensei, it's been too long. He then let go of the hug and said come in, meet my family and have some tea. Haruka smiled at the blonde and said even though you look different, you're still that knucklehead I knew and liked as a younger brother. But this, Naruto sheepishly smiled while scratching one of his cheeks and said haha. Haruto then went up to Haruka and extended his hand while saying I'm Haruto Sauma, Naruto's father by law and you must be Haruka, Naruto's first guardian. He talks highly of you. Haruka though reluctant at first, quickly shook the man's hand and said well, I was actually one of the first few people to see him as Naruto not the Kyuubi. But this, Haruto smiled and Urza came up to Haruka with a hug and said thank you or else little Naruto might never meet us at all. I'm Urza by the way, Haruto's lawfully wedded wife and please take a seat so that we could prepare some tea for you. Iruka simply blushed at the sight of being hugged by a really pretty yet hot woman, but shrugged it off as the said woman was already married. As Urza let go, Strange sighed and said anyways, I gotta go. Meiji's gonna kill me when I get home. With this, Strange quickly opened up a portal to his old world and said before going in also, nice to see you Iruka. Strange then got into the portal and it was closed up rather quickly. This made the Chunin to suddenly have the face of admirement. With this, Iruka had to sigh and thought Naruto now has something that I've always wanted, a family. Even though his real ones are here, he finally got something he wanted. As Iruka was about to say something, he was suddenly seated on near the dining table. With this, Iruka started saying what? Naruto then quickly snapped his fingers and a random cup of tea appeared on the Chunin's hands. This made Iruka to think so, this is magic. I've now seen everything. Unknown to him, Naruto could read minds and said yes you have seen everything, Iruka-sensei. But anyway sensei, drink your tea while we catch up. But this, Iruka nodded and thought that whatever Naruto was about to say wouldn't be too shocking how wrong he was. Naruto told Iruka about how the Konoha brothers gave him a new life, how he was able to use magic, and how well he's been with his family. But what shocked Iruka was when Naruto said that he had gotten himself married to Taya. With this, Iruka finished his tea halfway with a cough and muttered wait you got married before me. In which, Naruto nodded and said yes I did, sensei. Do you have a problem with that? Iruka simply shook his head at this and said no, it's just that I was wondering whether or not you got married to a nice lady. With this, Naruto chuckled and said well, she used to have a dirty mouth, but then decided that she should stop because it wasn't too ladylike and it was also because of she was living under this roof. Iruka nodded at this and said is she pretty? Naruto yet again chuckled and said yeah and curvy as well. With this, Iruka was about to say something only for Taya to come in and said Naruto koi, we have more guests at the living room and I'm pretty sure you're in good terms with them. Because, Shikamaru happens to be one of them. Naruto's face then brightened up and said okay Taya-chan, I'll be there in a sec. With this, Taya nodded and left the room, but not before bowing towards Iruka and said I'm Taya-sama, Naruto's lawfully wedded wife. Nice to meet you, Iruka-san. Iruka nodded as a sign of mutual understanding. As Taya left, Naruto said Iruka-sensei after you're done with your tea, you can have a chat with my parents, whilst Taya and I can go meet my remaining friends and greet them. But this, Iruka said very well, I wouldn't mind having a chat with them. But where are they anyways? Naruto chuckled and said they are probably upstairs doing that. However, they should be done in a few minutes. The 15-year-old then got up and said so, you should probably stay comfy until they're done. With that, Naruto left the room and went to the living room to see Shikamaru, Kiba and Akamaru, Tenten, Choji and Shino. As Naruto got downstairs, Shikamaru smiled and said wow Naruto, you look better and stronger than the last time we saw you. As he said that, the others nodded as well in agreement. Naruto simply smiled and said hey guys, it's been a while hasn't it? As you can tell, I got married with Taya and Shikamaru don't worry she has turned over a new leaf. Shikamaru simply nodded at this and Kiba shouted hey Naruto, I heard you got pretty strong without chakra, so I was wondering whether we could spar. Just the two of us. With this, Naruto smirked and said sure but was interrupted by Shino who said, but Kiba, Naruto had beaten you with a fart. Kiba blushed in embarrassment by this and said hey, Akamaru and I got better and stronger. Said dog barked and growled in anger towards Shino who shrugged. Choji however had thought of asking for some food in which Naruto snapped his fingers for a gigantic bag of potato chips to appear. With this, Choji tore open the bag of chips to consume its contents. As it happened, the Konoha simply sweat dropped and Shikamaru thought so, this is Naruto's new power. Where he doesn't use chakra to battle interesting. The moment Choji finished his bag of chips, Naruto quickly snapped his fingers so that it could be refilled. This caused everyone except for Taya to drop their jaws to the floor and shouted Nani. With this, Naruto and Taya laughed and Naruto said so anyways Kiba, let's have our battle at a training ground around here. In which, Kiba sighed and said, you mean the training ground that is right next to this mansion which happens to be the Forest of Death. Naruto simply chuckled and opened up a portal towards a random training ground. Which didn't shock anyone this time since they saw Naruto could do practically anything the imagination could go. With this, Naruto said towards Kiba after you. Kiba and Akamaru then scoffed and got into the portal with the others following in. Random training ground. As they got there, Naruto closed up the portal and Taya said okay, participants take your place. With this, Naruto and Kiba stood opposed to each other and bowed towards each other as a sign of respect. Taya then said rules are no killing in this spar. Winner will be decided by knockout or submission. Now fighters get into your stances. With this, Kiba got into his usual Inyazuka clan Taijutsu stance, while Naruto did some hand gestures so that his Eye of Agamotto could be activated and a green holographic chain to suddenly snake up around one of his wrists. This caused everyone to wonder what Naruto wanted to do and everyone thought not much of it. The next thing they knew, they were in the shock of their life. As Taya shouted go. Kiba and Akamaru quickly did their Getsuga and hit Naruto straight in the chest, only for the motion to be repeated again, and this time Naruto dodged it so that he could roundhouse kick Kiba in the face. With this, Kiba fell on his butt and gave Naruto the opportunity to kick the Inyazuka in the face, however Kiba managed to block the kick with his arm and went for an uppercut. However, with the eye of Agamotto, Naruto managed to see the incoming uppercut and grabbed the hand so that he could perform a triangle hold on Kiba. This made everyone to wonder where was Akamaru, and it turned out that said dog was actually biting on a bone that Naruto had given to him after roundhouse kicking Kiba. This made the Konoha to sweat drop, except for Tenten, who was enthralled by Naruto's fighting. Though she may not be like it, but she's actually pretty interested in fighting techniques and Naruto's totally intrigued her. Back to the fight, however, Kiba growled in pain while thinking, how did Naruto get this good? Last time I checked, he was using the Academy's Taijutsu, but now he's using AO. Naruto then got a stronger hold on Kiba and said, so Kiba, what's it gonna be? Gonna yield. With this, Kiba slipped through from the hold and jumped into the air to diving stomp Naruto on the chest. But since Naruto could manipulate time, he quickly reversed whatever Kiba tried to do so that Naruto could get the triangle lock back on. This made Kiba and the Konoha to wonder what type of jutsu was this. But since Taya was there and could read minds, simply said he's using the powers of the Eye of Agamotto. A contraption that allows the user to manipulate time and space. Thus in the wrong hands, a lot of bad things can happen. With this, the Konoha nodded as they continued watching Naruto dominate Kiba in the fight, only for Kiba to shout, I yield. This made everyone to look at Kiba and sweat dropped while shouting internally, what an idiot. Naruto then released Kiba from the hold and got him up while saying with a smirk, so, I got better huh. Kiba, usually not being the one who's submissive, simply nodded and said with an I'm tears, even with or without chakra, you still are able to beat me. With this, Naruto chuckled and said, I learned from the best of the best of the best, well actually my parents. Which made Shikamaru to say, you mean the Hokage. This however made Taya to sigh and Naruto to have a very unreadable expression. The Sorcerer Supreme then cleared his throat and said in a deep voice, do not associate me with that man. In a flash, Taya went to hug her husband and placed a hand behind Naruto's head while whispering, calm down, Naruto. Everything will be just fine. Your very hot, attractive and stunning wife is here. In response, the blonde Simile hugged his significant other back and it made Shikamaru to think whether Tamari and him will ever be like that, Kiba and Tenten to wonder when will they find their own soulmate in the future, Choji to think how good can love get, and Shino well was just sitting there quietly, but deep down he felt it all. As the couple let go of the hug, Naruto wrapped both of his arms around Taya's waist, while said girl placed both of her arms around Naruto's neck to lean into each other's face. As they got close, a familiar red head and blonde appeared in Shunshin's. With this, Naruto summoned his Sorcerer gun and Taya flipped open her spell book, only to snarl at the sight of a smiling Kushina who said hello Sachi. Chapter 4. The Unwanted Reunion. Naruto simply clenched his fists till his knuckles turned white, meanwhile Taya, not wanting to see her husband angry, clutched one of her husband's hands with one of her own and said while both of them turned around, come on Naruto-ko. But was interrupted by Naruto who said, so the bane to my existence finally decided to call me Sachi. I mean leaving me to rot in a village filled with idiots, not even sending me any letter, not a gift for my birthday, and to suddenly come here and call me Sachi. The two Namikaze girls flinched at Naruto's tone. Meanwhile the other Konoha nodded in understanding as they stood beside Naruto. Yes, the Namikazes expected him to sound angry, but this was totally unexpected as he sounded cold. As Naruto finished speaking his mind, he sighed and said to Taya while opening up a gateway, Tayu-chan, let's go. I can't be here for another second. With this, Taya nodded and they turned around hand in hand to get into the gateway. As they were about to go in, Natsumi summoned her chakra chains to chain Naruto and Taya from escaping, thus causing the gateway to vanish in thin air. This made Naruto to sigh yet again and shouted, are you serious? I mean using the chakra chains on one of two Sorcerer Supremes is simply idiotic. I mean I'm pretty sure that I am way more powerful than all of the tailed beasts combined and I don't even fucking use chakra. As he said that, Taya then said while still struggling with the chains herself, Naruto, geez, never seen you this mad since us facing Undertaker and Kane in the pits of Hell shudders. Naruto shuddered as well simply because of the memory not being a nice one to be remembered. That fateful day happened because Steven's final test for both Naruto and Taya, and the test was simply to incapacitate the Brothers of Destructions in the pits of hell. The test went bad when both apprentices underestimate the two brothers since they looked like normal mortals and then they got Chikeslammed and Tombstone Pilladrivered 10 times each. Luckily, Naruto and Taya had hoped that one day they will become the most powerful sorcerers in the elemental nations, and in order to do that was to simply finish the test. Which they did. The Brothers of Destruction couldn't help but to congratulate them, which got Naruto and Taya super confused. It turned out, Strange needed someone or two to test Naruto and Taya's powers. Thus, causing Boss to summon Undertaker and Kane to test them. In which, Naruto and Taya laughed about it and the couple and the brothers went for a drink in a local bar. Back to the story, Naruto sighed yet again and was about to be released from the chains, only for them to be broken by invisible bullets, which made both Naruto and Taya to smirk as they looked for the source to see a black-haired man wearing a green, white, and black school uniform, which happened to be their favorite uncle Tetsuya Shiba. This made Shikamaru and the others, including the Namikazes, to widen their eyes at the sudden appearance. As the chains retreated, Tetsuya did a superhero landing and said to Naruto and Taya, while staring intensely towards the Namikazes, "Hey you two, it's been a while, hasn't it?" Naruto simply nodded, and so did Taya, who said to Tetsuya, "Jason, what are you doing? You know what, let me guess, boss called you here." Tetsuya nodded at this, and Naruto asked, "Wait a minute, why are you wearing your school uniform? The last time we met, you were a general to the Melita," but was interrupted by Tetsuya, who said in a plain tone, "Your Aunt Miyuki happened to have a school uniform fetish and she wanted to spice things up a bit just now." As Naruto and Taya nodded, since they knew that the relationship between Tetsuya and Miyuki were bro-sis and yet husband and wife. Though, they didn't think much about since Tetsuya was adopted by his aunt, which meant that Tetsuya and Miyuki were cousins by law. Thus, not really being incest anymore. Tetsuya then took out one of his dual guns and aimed towards the Namikaze women, while saying, "Anyways, Naruto simply doesn't want to be disturbed. So please, before anything gets ugly, let my nephew to go home." With this, Kushina was furious and shouted, "What? He belongs in the Namikaze compound, not some sort of wretched mansion as we are Fami." But was interrupted by Tetsuya, who took a shot which flew a few millimeters away from Kushina and said, "That's funny, I don't remember anything about Naruto talking about a mother other than Urza-san." This made Kushina and Natsumi to widen their eyes and stared towards Naruto with shocked looks. Naruto, however, went to place a hand on one of the shoulders of his very tall uncle and said to Tetsuya, "Jason, take Taya home while I handle these scums. I need to show them on what they have missed." With this, Tetsuya nodded and quickly grabbed his niece-in-law. As Taya was about to protest, Tetsuya used his magic to run away as quickly as possible from the training ground. As both of them were out of sight, Naruto started to limber up his body and said with a murderous tone, "I'm going to make sure that you regret ever seeing me as a family member, since thinking of abandoning me is a good idea in the first place." Naruto then placed his palm onto his Wiser driver scanner with a connect ring for it to announce, "Connect please." All of a sudden, a magic circle appeared with his Wizarsword gun right next to Naruto, and said Sorcerer quickly grasped it with full force, anger seen in his eyes, as if he wanted to destroy anything or anyone in his path, which happened to be Kushina and Natsumi. Sensing the killing intent from her brother, Natsumi shouted, "Ani-chan, we can talk about Thai," but said blonde couldn't finish her sentence, thanks to Naruto thrusting the butt of his handle into her stomach with lightning speed. As Natsumi widened her eyes in shock, Naruto quickly went behind her, grabbed her waist with both of her arms to slam her to the ground back first. The moment Natsumi landed, Naruto said with disgust, "I don't have a sister." With this, Kushina tried to run towards her daughter, only for Naruto to run up to her to give her a running knee to the gut. As the knee connected to the belly, Naruto whispered, "Don't you dare think that you are ever going to be my mother, you lost that title ever since you decided to abandon me." With this, Kushina flinched and Naruto grabbed her by the scruff at the neck. Spectating enough carnage, Shikamaru was about to do one of his Kajime no Jutsu, but stopped when a flash of light appeared right next to Naruto, which revealed that Minato has arrived. The moment Minato arrived, Naruto smirked and let go of Kushina while saying, "As fast as you are Hokage-sama, you couldn't even save your wife and daughter in need from my wrath, but thankfully you arrived before I could do much more to them." Not wanting to be on his son's bad side, Minato nodded and grabbed both his wife and daughter to Hiraition to the Namikaze compound. As the Namikazes disappeared, Naruto chuckled and said in a low voice, "It was about to get fun." A few hours later. Namikaze compound. Kushina woke up with sweat present all over her body. The moment she sat up, she started to tear up as she remembered what Naruto had done to her and her daughter. It seemed as if her son wanted nothing from her, Minato, or even their daughter. Who wouldn't blame him? It was partially her fault, and thinking of leaving him to train Natsumi was a good idea. But she should have known that there would be backlash. And now, they had to pay for the consequences. With this, Kushina started to whimper, and her husband quickly Hiraitioned into the room to hug her. She quickly returned the hug and murmured, "Mii not to sniffsachiti right to kill me." Minato solemnly nodded, but he knew what Naruto was in anger, and also he didn't want anything to do with the Namikazes. But this, the Namikaze couple stayed and slept like that for the night. Sanctum Sanctorium. Meanwhile, Naruto arrived home to witness the sight of Taya and his aunt Miyuki having a chat about something he didn't want to know. While Taya, Haruto and Urza went to catch up. But this, Naruto sighed and said to Daima only to receive a loud carry from everyone in the house. As Naruto got into the mansion, Taya ran up to him to give her husband a comforting hug and said, "Naruto-kun, go sit down while I prepare some tea." Naruto, not one to actually mind service from his wife, quickly nodded and went to sit on a couch. The moment his butt touched the cushion, his aunt Miyuki ran up to him and gave him a suffocating hug while saying, "Hey Naruto, I miss you so much." By suffocating, it meant that her perky breasts were literally in Naruto's face. Not that he minded, but he didn't like the idea of his surrogate aunt doing something like this right in front of his uncle. But since Taya doesn't really have any emotions, the god of destruction of the irregular at Magic High School world didn't mind the action at all, but said to save Naruto from pain, "Miyuki, let go of Naruto please. He might die of suffocation." But this, Miyuki looked down towards her breasts and blushed while letting go of the hug, while Haruto and Urza simply chuckled at the younger couple's antics. It may have been incest, but since boss thought of hiring the two into the task force and into the magic user division. Which meant that they may or may not be very powerful. Which they did proven it when Taya came close to beating Strange and Miyuki showing her abilities. Yes, it may have been thanks to the CADs, but it still helped the user to use magic. Back to the story, Naruto went to rub his temples and said, "Nice to see you too, Miyuki-bachan, and are you and Jai-chan going to leave soon?" Which Taya answered, "No, boss decided that we deserve to be here as I am your favorite uncle, and I don't think he wants your uncle Natsu to be here since his gift for your wedding day was a box of condoms." This made Naruto to nod and sighed. He did love his uncle Natsu and Aunt Lucy, but Natsu kept ruining moments for everyone. Such as, his wedding a moment no one really wanted to remember. Naruto then said, "So, who's cooking dinner?" By the time he finished saying that, Taya from the kitchen shouted, "Dinner's ready." This made Naruto and the others to wonder what could Taya cook. The reason was simply because Taya used to be a tomboyish girl, but probably thanks to being taught by Meiji, she got used to cooking. Without thinking twice, the whole family went to dining room to witness Taya preparing dinner, which made Naruto to silently thank Kami for giving him a wife. Not that he was ungrateful of Taya, but seeing that she could do what his mother could not, such as cooking, except when it comes to cakes. As Taya finished up, everyone was simply enthralled at what Taya prepared. A bowl of chicken teriyaki, a bowl of miso soup and a bowl of bread. For drinks, she prepared tea like how Strange would like it. But this, everyone took their seats and each couple sat close to one another. With nothing left to say, they had a very quiet dinner since everyone knew that when Naruto has an upcoming battle, he needs some time to think for himself. A few minutes later, everyone finished their dinner and got into their bedchambers. Yes, even Taya and Miyuki had their own. As Naruto laid his head onto his pillow, he started to wonder on what strategies would he need to use up against 6 of the rookie 12. 2 of them were Jounin, while the others were Chunin. Not only that, Naruto was also thinking of how should he do his entrance. He was in a conflict for a little while and he got into a decision. Taya came out from the bathroom and wore something that made his little friend to get up. She wore a nice sexy lingerie, which most of the time she doesn't really wear. Taya smirked at Naruto's shocked face while pushing both of her breasts together and said in a seductive tone, "Seeing anything you like, Naruto-kun." As she finished the kun, she seductively winked and walked towards him while shaking her hips. This made Naruto to blush in embarrassment and his blush turned redder when Taya curled up to the bed slowly. With this, Naruto looked at you, the reader with an raising eyebrow and said, "Damn." A few hours later. Naruto and Taya are now seen nude with Taya resting her head onto Naruto's toned chest. Panting as they made love for at least 3 hours or so. As Naruto was about to close his eyes, Taya already asleep muttered, "I love you, Naruto-koi." Naruto simply smiled at his wife and kissed her on the forehead while saying, "I love you too, Taya-chan." Naruto then closed his eyes and went to bed. Unknown to them, Haruto was actually watching the whole scene since the door wasn't closed properly, which kinda scarred him for life as he and Urza had never attempted what Naruto did to pleasuring his wife. Tentacles. With nothing left to say, Haruto went to his bedchambers to see Urza already asleep. Not being able to do what Naruto displayed, Haruto sighed and simply laid on his side of the bed to sleep. The next day, 9 a.m. Junin Exams Arena. A lot of shouting and cheering was had thanks to a lot of people who were spectating the long-awaited rematch between Naruto and Sasuke. Not only that, Hinata, Sakura, Ino, Lee and Neji will be involved as Naruto had challenged all 6 of them at the same time. Which made people wonder whether Naruto is as good as they say in the bingo books or really dumb. Not only that, some people were actually placing bets on who would win and most people were actually betting against Naruto. Back to the story, Minato suddenly got up from his seat at the cage box and announced, "Now, let the battle begin." As Minato finished saying that, the 6 of the rookie 12 appeared in shunshuns and everyone started to cheer for them. Sasuke simply HN. And said, "This is pointless, I will still beat the dope regardless if he has chakra or not." The moment Sasuke finished his sentence, a spotlight suddenly appeared and it focused the sky. As everyone looked to where it focused, the spectators' cheering grew louder as they saw Naruto floating in the sky thanks to his own cloak of levitation. All of a sudden, piano started playing and Naruto extended his arms while closing his eyes. Glorious. No, I won't give in. I won't give in. Till I'm victorious. And I will defend. I will defend. As the sudden voices were singing, for some reason the villagers were joining in as well. Including Kakashi, Shizune, Tsunade and Jiraiya. Meanwhile, the other rookies including Sai were confused at Naruto's flashy entrance. They were trying to process what Naruto was doing. With the confusion in his mind, Shikamaru was about to ask something only to be answered by Taya, who was sitting next to Shikamaru. "He's been watching too much wrestling. I already told him that it would destroy his mind." Satisfied with the answer, Shikamaru left it at that as Naruto landed onto the ground. All of a sudden, Kushina appeared in full shinobi gear and said, "Alright, I'll be the proctor of this match. Rules are no killing," and without further ado Hajime. With this, the ninjas disappeared in shunshuns and Naruto simply smirked as a few seconds later Sakura came out of her hiding spot to land a powerful punch towards Naruto while shouting Shanaro. As the punch was about to connect, Naruto simply grabbed the fist and said in an amused tone, "Is that the best you could do?" With this, everyone except for Haruto and the other magic users widened their eyes to see one of the most powerful taijutsu attacks in shinobi history was simply blocked by someone who has no chakra. As quick as a flash, Sakura tried to pull away her fist only for Naruto to place a hand on one of her ears to snap his fingers. Which for some reason started sending sound waves around the arena. Seeing his own technique being displayed, Tayuya couldn't help but to smirk at his surrogate nephew and never thought that he would actually use one of my techniques. Pretty funny though. Too bad I don't have any emotions. Back at the match, Sakura collapsed onto the floor with blood dripping from her ear. Meanwhile, Naruto was still somehow standing straight. The moment Sakura collapsed, Hinata suddenly came out from her hiding spot with her Byakugan flared and charged towards her crush. However, that became a mistake on her part as Naruto held out his hand and shouted "Steal." All of a sudden, blue aura started to emit from Naruto's palm and Hinata felt weird in her private parts. With this, she stopped for a moment and placed her hand on one of her butt cheeks to feel that her panties were gone. Naruto then opened up his palm to reveal that he had stolen Hinata's purple panties. In embarrassment, Hinata collapsed. Meanwhile every single pervert in the crowd were giggling in glee, only to be hit, punched and kicked by their wives' girlfriends. Jiraiya however was simply punched in the face by Tsunade which knocked him out. Meanwhile, Urza, Taya and Miyuki started to have Levi-like glares towards Naruto since they never knew who in the multiverse would teach him such a crazy technique. While Haruto and Tayuya looked at each other to sigh and mentally cursed slightly spiky chestnut brown-haired man and had a pair of green eyes. His usual outfit consisted of a gold-trimmed green mantle, white shirt, pants and leather boots, who happened to be one of Naruto's favorite uncles, Kazuma Satu. Naruto mentally smirked and thought, "Haha, I should probably thank Uncle Kazuma soon." He then placed the undergarment on Hinata's torso and smirked. All of a sudden, he couldn't control himself and then realized that he had been hit by Ino's Shinranshin no Jutsu. Only problem is that Naruto had already trained himself for it. Thus, the Sorcerer Supreme shook the jutsu off which made Ino who was out of her hiding spot to widen her eyes in shock. With this, Naruto did some odd hand seals and his necklace or rather Eye of Agamotto suddenly opened up to look like an actual eye opening. As Naruto was done doing that, Ino took out a kunai and threw it towards Naruto, but since the eye could predict the future, Naruto simply dodged it and ran up to her to shove. The moment he shoved her, Ino's astral self was forced out of her body. Which made Ino to feel even more shock. So when her astral self got into her physical one, she simply fainted in shock. With this, Naruto sighed and silently whispered, "Useless fangirl. Hopefully, she has learned to stop sucking the teams." As he finished saying that, Neji and Lee ran up to him with their respective taijutsu stances ready. Without thinking twice, Lee tried to land a Dinamiku Intori on Naruto's face, which ended in misery as Naruto could predict when would it happen as the Eye of Agamotto could predict certain events. Thus, Naruto dodged the attack to knee Lee, exactly where the sun never rises, which made Lee to clutch the damaged part while whimpering. Meanwhile, people from the spectators especially male, groaned in pain as they know how much pain was involved. However, Taya smirked and thought so, he did learn Krav Maga. Lee then fell to his knees to receive a roundhouse kick to the head. With that, Lee dropped onto his back and fainted as the impact gave him a mild concussion. Naruto being the smartass as he is suddenly said maybe you should never have given me any openings since I did learn Krav Maga. No groin, no Krav Maga. The moment Naruto finished saying that, Neji got closer to him and started to use his Juken towards him while saying you're in my range of devastation. As he was about to hit Naruto with his Haki Rakujikin SHM, Naruto suddenly did some odd hand gestures and all of a sudden Riptide and Dragon Handle appeared on both of his hands. Thus, causing Neji to pause in confusion and into shock when Naruto presses the clicker so that the celestial bronze sword could appear. This made everyone in the crowd, except the magic users, to cheer at how Naruto managed to summon such a well-made sword. Heck, even Tenten couldn't stop but to look at how well designed it looked. It may have been from afar, but it still looked like some god COUGH2 Poseidon COUGH2 used to have it in battle. Naruto then smirked when Neji paused and placed the Dragon Handle's handle on his mouth while holding Riptide and Wizard Sword gun on both hands. Thus causing Naruto to use the Santoryu. A sword technique so difficult to that even Urza wouldn't dare to master. For some reason during Naruto's wedding, the Straw Hat Pirates appeared to give Naruto a present. Which everyone knew that boss had sent them. Thus causing Naruto to obtain a scroll from Uranoa's Oro, Urza's multiversal rival. Seeing the technique used, Urza TSK'd and said damn you, Zoro. Lousy swordsman who can't even look for directions. Why did you have to suddenly fucking appear at my son's wedding? But was interrupted by Haruto who wrapped a hand over her shoulder while saying Urza-chan, leave it be. I know that Zoro wiped the floor with you. But, you're still my number one. Touched by her husband's words, Urza leaned towards her husband's head to have a quick peck on the lips. However, they missed Naruto literally kicking Neji Hyuga's ass. Naruto literally took the chance to attack when Neji paused for a while, he kicked the Hyuga in the gut as hard as possible. Causing the Hyuga boy to vomit out his breakfast. Naruto then quickly teleported behind Neji and punched him in the back of the head. Thus making Neji to fall frontwards and as he was about to land on THR sandy floor face first, Naruto quickly teleported to face Neji so that he could bitch slap the Hyuga prodigy. The moment the slap connected, Neji was sent flying backwards into the concrete wall which created a crater. Which made everyone from the spectators to drop their jaws in shock. Including Taya who has seen Naruto displaying brutality anywhere, earth, hell, bed yeah, she basically has seen Naruto showing brutality, but not this much. As Neji started to get up and coughing violently with drops of blood coming from his mouth, Naruto flew towards Neji while grabbing his neck to carry the Hyuga off his feet and shouted in his face, still think I'm a demon now. I remember your exact words when word broke out about the fox that used to be in my body. Naruto then smirked as he gripped the Hyuga's throat tighter and said in here I am beating you without chakra. Just pure skill and mana. This made Neji to flinch, thus mouthing out I'm sorry. Naruto smirked and threw him into the wall to make him faint, but not before saying apology accepted with a wall. As the 5 ninjas were all laid out, everyone looked for Sasuke who suddenly appeared. Ready for a fight. But this, both former friends now enemies had a stare off for a short while in silence. Up until a tumbleweed started to move around them. Everyone literally got out of their seats to see the two squaring off. The match that might even be bigger than Stone Cold vs The Rock 3, Hulk Hogan vs Ultimate Warrior 1, and Undertaker vs Shawn Michaels 1. But this, Naruto smirked and said so Sasuke, are you ready for a beatdown of a lifetime? Sasuke simply crossed his arms while muttering a HN. And said in your dreams dope. I can beat you with 30% of my power. Naruto chuckled at this and said really, because I beat all 5 of these guys with barely even 1%. This made the Uchiha's blood to boil and unsheathed Kusanagi while shouting give me all you got. With this, Naruto got into his Santoryu stance and said with pleasure. Then, both boys charged towards each other to clash swords. Since Sasuke had only one sword, he was simply overpowered by Naruto's technique, thus causing Sasuke to pull out of the clash. But as he did that, he went for an upward slash, only to be blocked by the shattered sword on Naruto's mouth, which gave Naruto the chance to disarm Sasuke. Sasuke hissed in pain as the blade actually made contact with his skin. This made Sasuke to let go of his Kusanagi and causing him to do a number of backflips to escape from one of Naruto's rapid slashes. Sasuke then TSK'd and thought what the hell? How did the dope get so strong? It's like no matter how better I get, Naruto just gets stronger. Without thinking, Sasuke quickly did a few hand seals and blew out a giant ball of fire named the Kaiten. Tikyaku no Jutsu. Seeing the familiar jutsu, Naruto simply smirked and mentally thought thank you Uncle Natsu. In most people's eyes, the fireball had engulfed Naruto, but in the magic users, they smirked seeing Naruto literally eating the damn fireball without effort. As Kushina was about to end the match, she stopped to see what the magic users saw. Seeing the dobe eating one of his most powerful jutsus, Sasuke decided to use his trump card. The complete Susanoo. But this, Sasuke quickly flared his Mangekyou Sharingan as Naruto was still eating his ball of fire and shouted Susanoo. All of a sudden, a holographic creature with demonic horns, a long appendage on its chin, and a malevolent grin. This made the civilians who bet against Naruto to cheer and Sasuke couldn't but to smirk. The last Uchiha then said arrogantly, "You think you can beat me, dope?" Naruto simply smirked and said perfect Susanoo. Interesting but too bad since the fireball you let me consume gave me a huge power-up. However, for the sake of Meiji-sensei. The blonde sorcerer then took out his spell book and flipped open some pages while saying I must use one of her spells. As he stopped to a page, Naruto pointed a finger towards Sasuke and said Perdir. Which meant in English destroy. As he finished saying that, Sasuke's Susanoo suddenly collapsed by itself, causing Sasuke to have a massive amount of pain in his eyes. This made the civilians to wonder who trained Naruto to fight without chakra. When Sasuke's Susanoo was completely gone and said person collapsed, Naruto flew towards him and said now, do you know your place? As he finished saying that, Sasuke looked up to the blonde to spit in his face. Naruto however somehow managed to evade it and said still haven't learned. The blonde then grabbed him by the neck and whispered well then just remember I see through you. But this, Naruto slammed him to the ground and repeatedly stomped on Sasuke's face to give the Uchiha a bloody nose, 2 black eyes and a busted lip. As the Uchiha laid there unmotionless, Naruto stopped and shouted to the civilians, are you not entertained? Thus, causing a lot of cheering from the people, his friends and his adopted family. His biological one however were simply shocked from the battle with one thought in their minds, how is he so strong? Naruto then looked up to the crowd to look for his wife, and when he saw her, Naruto gave her his signature foxy smile, and Taya simply smiled back. Chapter 5. The Wrath of the Sorcerer Supreme. A few weeks after Sasuke had gotten his butt kicked, Naruto and his family had been given the respect that they deserved. He and his wife were now considered as SS rank, even though the power that they've shown was barely 1% of their true power. Now that Naruto and Taya are considered jounins, they were supposed to be handed missions that were very dangerous or too much for most ninjas to handle. But sadly, the Saumas and the Shibas doesn't really want to associate themselves with a village at all. Truth to be told, Naruto does still care about Konoha's well-being. However, he doesn't really care for its people with only the exception of those who he kept close with such as Kakashi and Jiraiya. Not only that, he still contained immense hatred towards his biological family. However, Naruto is still conflicted about his feelings towards his twin sister. Thus here we are, seeing Naruto in a cross-legged sitting position while meditating in his bedroom. The blonde sorcerer was so into his meditation that it caused a crater to form on the ground beneath him. Before the crater could get any deeper, the bedroom's door opened up to reveal his wife, who seemed to be holding some sort of letter. But as she walked in, Naruto broke out from his meditation and said so honey, what are you holding? Taya sighed as she walked towards Naruto and said it's a letter from Strange Sensei. With that statement, Naruto's eyes widened up and quickly grabbed the letter away from Taya's grasp. Naruto's eyes widened even bigger when he gave the letter a read. Naruto. If you're wondering whether I'm alright or not. Let's just say I'm fine. Nothing bad is going on, the reason why I'm writing a letter instead of opening up a gateway towards where you are is because I have to attend a very big wedding ceremony and since it's one of my friend's wedding, I have no choice but to attend it. Or else Tsukasa would be kicking my ass again. Anyways, I sense a terrible danger coming towards the elemental nations. And I'm not talking about beings like Thanos, Dormammu or entities like those. I'm talking about Kefka Palazzo. Even then, I'm not sure. For all I know, you must get yourself mentally and physically ready since he's one difficult evil force to face. Hopefully by the time I'm done with attending this wedding and handling Dormammu again, I can help you, but for the time being I am forced to handle many other things. Till then, don't forget any of your father's, Uncle Tetsuya's or Dr. Fate's, though you don't really meet him that much, teachings as they have helped you in faith, bravery and confidence. Sincerely. Dr. Stephen Strange. Your favorite sensei. Naruto widened his eyes and said quietly, but enough for Taya to hear Kefka's back. This caused Taya to widen her eyes as well and said, you mean the psycho clown that took both Dr. Fate and Strange Sensei's sealing magic to put him down? Naruto nodded at this and said looks like I would need to get to the library and give the book of Vishanti a read, as I still haven't mastered the full use of the Eye of Agamotto. As he said that, he was grasping the eye with care. Not knowing what to do, Taya placed both of her arms around her husband's neck and gave him a quick peck on the lips. As she did that, Naruto was stunned for a short while. Seeing this, Taya blushed in embarrassment and tried to let go of the embrace. However, Naruto grabbed both of her arms with his own and proceeded to lean towards his wife to press his lips against hers softly, tasting the sweet flavor of strawberries of her tongue and lips. Taya widened her eyes and proceeded to kiss her husband back. As they were having their making out moment, Naruto grinned mentally and decided to place both of his hands under her butt cheek area, which caused a yelp to come out of Taya's mouth. Naruto then carried her for a short while and placed her back first on the bed. A few hours later, the married couple were then seen getting dressed into their everyday attire. As they were done, Naruto suddenly said, "Tayu-chan, I'm going to have a walk to think this through. I mean, Kefka is one difficult person to handle." Taya chuckled and said, "No Naruto-kun, he's a god, remember?" Naruto grinned and said as he stroked the back of his wife's head, "I know that dear, I know." Taya smiled and gave her husband a peck on the cheek. Naruto then nodded and walked out of the room to get downstairs. As he walked down the staircase, his trusty cloak flew towards him and he grabbed it instinctively to place it around his neck with the collar spiked up. As the Sorcerer Supreme got downstairs, his adoptive parents and surrogate uncle and aunt were in the living room. Haruto, sensing something wrong, suddenly said, "Naruto Musuko, are you ill?" but was interrupted by Naruto, who shouted, "Kefka's back, Dad. Kefka's back." With this, not only did the Saumas widen their eyes, but the Shibas as well. Taya was speechless, and so was Miyuki. Urza was drawing blood on her palms as she clenched her fists, meanwhile Haruto stammered out, "I am possible. Strange and fate sealed him away for good." Naruto shook his head and said, "No, it'll take at least Strange Sensei, Meiji Sensei, Dr. Fate, Klee and you to seal him for good." So Haruto Tauchan, where were you on the day where the magic user division were fighting off Kefka, who for some reason had boosts? Naruto blushed at this, and so did Urza as they remembered the day of the incident. Haruto gulped down the blush and said, "Naruto, I was actually consummating my marriage with your mother that day." Naruto widened his eyes at first, but then his face turned red and stammered, what? Haven't you had enough consummating your marriage? I mean, how many packs of condoms do you have?" This time, Taya blushed alongside Haruto. The two men then looked at each other for a moment and nodded slowly. Taya cleared his throat and said, "Naruto, actually we've got unlimited packs of them in the pocket dimension." Meanwhile, Haruto nodded. Naruto, not knowing what to say, simply raised both of his arms up and said, "I give up, I gotta go." The Sorcerer Supreme then walked towards the front door to open it and walked out of the Sanctorium. As he got out, Naruto realized that it left the book of Vishanti in the library of the sanctum. But since Naruto was lazy, he simply opened up a gateway towards the exact spot of the library and grabbed it from the shelf. He then chuckled to himself and thought, like master, like student. The 15-year-old blonde then flipped some of the pages on the book and got to the page on how to use the Eye of Agamotto properly. Naruto then quickly read it and thought to himself, I see, the Eye of Agamotto can not only predict the future, reverse time or do anything time related, but can also shoot out projectiles. Well, more, to beams actually, and can actually see through lies. The blonde sorcerer then thought about mixing the powers of both the Eye of Agamotto and the Wand of Watum. But since his strange sensei had already done those kind of combos, Naruto decided to just use some of the magic his father had taught him. With this in mind, Naruto decided to go into the Forest of Death to train himself in using combinations of the magic he had been taught by most of the magic user division members. The sorcerer smiled to himself and the cape helped him to raise him in the air so that Naruto could fly into the forest. The Forest of Death. In the forest, Naruto realized that it was a great place to master the usage of the Eye of Agamotto. With this, Naruto smiled to himself and said better find an open spot and get my training on. He then flew around the forest to find a great spot. When the young sorcerer supreme then found the perfect spot, he quickly conjured up a wooden book stand to place the book on its slot to keep it still. Naruto then took a deep breath and placed both of his legs in a horse riding position, while thinking it says on the book that I must do some more odd hand signs in order to at least do some more things with the Eye of Agamotto. Naruto then took another breath and started to raise his arms above his head, then continued by extending his arms away from each other while pointing both of his index fingers towards opposite directions. By doing this, Naruto not only activated the hidden powers of the Eye of Agamotto, but also opened up a gateway for a swan-like bird that have crimson feathers on their body and a golden tail as long as a peacock's. Their claws and beak are gleaming gold and their eyes are black. Their scarlet body feathers glow faintly in darkness while their golden tail feathers are hot to the touch. This was a phoenix, one of the most powerful mythological creatures of all time. As the phoenix flew towards the gateway, Naruto sensed it and opened his eyes. Only to realize that a full-grown phoenix was standing on his right arm. Naruto then chuckled to himself and said, finally, I have a familiar. But not a casual one, a freaking phoenix. Naruto then placed his left hand onto his chin to stroke it and said, I think your name should be Felix. Yes, Felix. Always wanted to name my familiar that. The now named Felix chirped in agreement and Naruto said, Welp Felix, want to watch me train? The phoenix simply nodded slowly and flew a few meters away to observe its new master's training. Naruto then did some new hand gestures and extended both of his arms again. only for the eye of Agamotto to literally shoot out a giant green beam that went literally towards a horde of trees that were in front of him. Naruto sighed while Felix chirped as a sign of laughter. He had a long way to go. A few hours later. The peaceful spot of the forest had now become a gigantic crater thanks to some trial and error, but in the end, Naruto had gotten the eye to work properly. Naruto was now covered in gashes, bruises everywhere on his body, and had a split lip. He chuckled to himself as the eye finally got to do what he wanted it to do. To see the future of Kefka's return. Now that he knew of what to do, Naruto snapped his fingers to awake his phoenix familiar from its slumber. Felix yawned for a bit as it woke up and flew towards to stand on Naruto's right arm. The phoenix chirped cheerfully at the sight of its master's state. Naruto then placed his left hand under its beak to gently rub it. Naruto then said, "Alright Felix, let's get you to your new home. Shall we?" Felix nodded slowly and Naruto flew upwards so that he could fly towards the sanctorium. As he got to the front door, he noticed a familiar presence from the other side of the door. The presence simply had a power level the same as stranger, maybe higher. With this, Naruto gulped and opened the door to see his adoptive father and surrogate uncle having a talk with a familiar well-built man wearing a familiar golden helmet named the Helm of Nabu to hide his identity. He was also wearing the golden cloak of levitation and wears a blue bodysuit along with golden gloves and boots. This was Kent Nelson Jr., the new Dr. Fate. Conveniently enough, he happened to be the son of the original Dr. Fate Kent Nelson Sr. Funnily enough, he is the exact replica of his father, and Sho also happens to be the only member in the magic user division to not have taught Naruto anything. As the young sorcerer got in, the chat between the three magic users stopped. The atmosphere then turned dark, which caused Felix to fly away to find a spot to sleep. As Felix did so, Naruto tapped Kent's shoulder and said, "We'll catch up later, my friend." The more experienced sorcerer simply nodded and Taya and Naruto both left the room to get to their respective bedrooms. Naruto gulped yet again and sheepishly said, "Oh hey, doctor," but was interrupted by Kent who said, "Naruto, I'm sure that Strange had sent you a letter informing you that Kefka's back, right?" Naruto nodded at this and said, "Yeah, that's right." Kent simply nodded and said, "Alright, but did he mention anything about helping Ippo after he's done?" Again, Naruto nodded, which caused Kent to shake his head and said, "He's not allowed to actually, because this is a battle you alone must win. However, the only help you'll be receiving is your wife and some of my teachings." With this, Naruto looked up towards the more experienced sorcerer with a questioning look, which Kent answered, "I'm going to make you become my apprentice for a few hours, as I heard that you've actually learned a clone technique from one of Strange's lessons." Naruto then blinked his eyes for a few seconds and said, "Wait, why for a few hours?" Kent sighed at this and said, "Because Kefka's coming tomorrow and I want to make sure you're ready." This time, it was Naruto's turn to sigh and said, "Fine, I'll do it." Kent smiled under his mask while saying good. At this moment Naruto knew he fucked up. Next day. In the peaceful village of Konoha, everything was simply normal. Men were working their butts off while some of the women were chatting or doing girlish stuff. But their Hokage, however, was simply tearing out some of his hair after finishing a quarter of his gigantic pile of paperwork. Minato was simply scarred after witnessing barely 1% of his son's power and thought, why? Why did I decide to believe that the village will see Naruto as a hero? Why was I so stupid? The blonde Hokage then slammed his hand onto the table. But as he did that, a portal suddenly appeared right above the center point of Konoha, which caused every single civilian to look up as the atmosphere of the village suddenly turned dark. Minato got up from his seat and turned around to see everything unfold. With this, the Hokage shouted, "Nico, Taka." All of a sudden, two Anbus wearing a cat Anbu mask and hawk Anbu mask respectively sunshined into the room. Both Anbus placed one of their knees down each, while the other was on its foot. Nico then said, "What is it, Hokage-sama?" Minato cleared his throat and said, "Get your Anbu squads and investigate the mysterious hole in the sky. That thing could destroy the village or do something worse." Both Anbus simply nodded and sunshined away. Minato then sighed and said, "Why do I feel like some sort of clown or jester is behind all this?" Meanwhile on the other side of the portal. Strange, you thought that I could be defeated so easily. You may be powerful at sealing, but neither you nor Fate or even the both of you could actually seal me off forever," shouted a familiar clown wearing an outfit composed of primarily red and yellow fabrics, a mismatched jumble of stripes and polka dots. He also wears a red and white striped ruffle around his neck and a red cloak with a yellow and red inner lining. This was Kefka Palazzo, the god of magic. His face and hands are covered with white makeup and he has one red eyeshadow. Which made him look more insane. Kefka then gave out another laugh and said, "Once I destroy this world which contains your prostage Strange, the League of Dark Magic shall be bored. Ha ha ha." As the portal finished to open up, Kefka grinned like a madman and flew towards the portal. The moment he got to the other side, he was welcomed by the sight of Konoha civilians trembling in fear. But the sight, Kefka shouted, "Hello people of Konoha, I would like to inform you that your world is about to end. After all, I am a god." But this threat, the civilians were running like chickens. Meanwhile some of the ninjas were huddled up in one spot while the others were hiding from different places. Unimpressed with the terror, Kefka shouted, "Blizzaga." Suddenly, a giant blizzard started to fly across the village. As the ice attack hit a part of the village, some of the Konoha inns were decimated and some buildings were destroyed. Kefka cackled at this and flew downwards so that he could land on the Hokage tower. As he did so, a random kunai flew towards him in which Kefka simply dodged it, only feel a random ball of energy pushing onto his back. With this, Kefka was pushed down the roof's floor which caused a small crater. As he was floored down, Kefka turned around to see Minato holding one of his Hiraishin kunes on one hand. The Hokage then said, "I don't know who you are, but you're a threat to the village." Kefka laughed at this as he got up and said, "I'm Kefka Palazzo, and I love to destroy." Ha 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 ha. Minato was confused by this and with a chance, Kefka shouted Ultima. In an instant, Kefka shot out a gigantic blast of magic towards Minato. Not knowing what the blast was, Minato threw his kunai further away from the spot he was on to Hiraishin away from the blast. The sweat started to trickle down from Minato's from his forehead, and at this moment he knew Kefka's one difficult enemy to defeat. Meanwhile with Naruto. Our blonde protagonist was now seen floating in a cross-legged position while meditating with his hands in some sort of weird hand gesture. Dramatically enough, he was just in his boxers which unintentionally caused him to expose his well-chiseled six-pack. As he was about to be done with his meditation, Taya barged into the room and shouted, "Naruto. Kefka's back." With this statement, Naruto smirked and said, "Very well Tae-chan, go get Haruto Tauchan, Urza Kachan, Tatsuya Jisen and Miyuki Bachan and ask them to help the civilians get to safety. Because, I don't think Kefka's working alone this time." Taya nodded at this and went out of the room to do as what her husband had told her to. She left. Naruto sighed and thought, "I know that Nelson-sensei told me that Tae-chan will be the only help that I'll get in this battle, but I do not want my wife to be in any more danger. I know that she's almost at par as me. But still, I don't like seeing her hurt." Naruto then took a deep breath and said, "Let's do this." Meanwhile with Kefka. "Haha, too bad Hokage-sama. You're too slow for me. Haha." Cackled Kefka as Minato got hit by another unexpected faraga by the magical jester. Minato then suddenly caught up blood as his condition was pitiful. He had a bloody dried eye, a few cracked ribs and second-degree burns on both of his hands. The Hokage then turned around to see an unconscious Jiraiya and Tsunade. Not only them, but Kakashi was grabbing his already wounded arm meanwhile Shizune was tending it. Guy was stuck under a pile of debris meanwhile other ninjas were simply knocked down. Two of them happened to be his wife and daughter who tried to help Minato in fighting the psycho clown. But it turned out that the Kyuubi's chakra wasn't enough to even lay a touch on the supposed god of magic. Which caused Natsumi to actually be incapacitated first. To make matters worse, Kushina's chakra chain simply shatters when they were about to touch Kefka. And here they were, the Hokage of a village and the psycho clown who was destroying said village. Kefka then continued to cackle and said, "By the way, some of my dear friend Ganondorf's minions are here just to destroy everything of Konoha. Then as I incapacitate you, I will force you witness the destruction of the village which you've placed too much faith on. Hahaha." Minato's eyes widened at this and muttered out, "You monster." Kefka shook his head while smiling and said, "Me, a monster? No, I assure you that I am no such thing." Minato Namikaze the clown stopped at mid-sentence as he pointed towards Minato and said, "You know what, screw that plan. I'll kill where you stand. So Minato, any last words?" Minato spitted out some dry blood which was in his mouth towards Kefka and said, "Go to hell." Kefka smirked maniacally at this and shouted, "Meteor." As he finished shouting, 5 fireballs came out of thin air, dropped down to the floor to bounce back towards Minato. The moment the fireballs was a few millimeters away, Minato closed his eyes while waiting for his downfall. As it got closer, Minato thought, "I'm sorry Naruto." But then he realized the fireballs did hit something but not him. Minato instantly opened his eyes to see a familiar blonde-haired boy, but he was wearing what it seemed to be a black-visored ornamented cap, torn at the back. His attire was a roughly mid-calf length black coat with chains attached. Under the coat was a white tank top accompanied by the Eye of Agamotto hinged around his neck. He was also wearing a pair of black slacks and a pair of combat boots. Other than that, the cloak of levitation was simply staying still on his shoulder. This was Naruto-sama, an updated version as he was trained by Dr. Fate. Kefka widened his eyes at this and said, "So, you're stranger's prostage." Naruto then fixed his cap to a comfortable position and said, "Kefka, I'll gladly take you on." The Sorcerer Supreme then pointed towards Kefka with his right index finger and said, "After all, you're just plainly annoying." Kefka widened his eyes at this and his expression changed from joy to anger beyond belief. Seeing this, Naruto smiled and said, "By the way, my family's taking care of your minions as we speak." With Haruto and the others. Coin, Kikusu Traco. Psycho. Announced a familiar belt scanner as Haruto in Kamen Rider Wizard Flame style struck Wushu pose. As he did so, a magic circle appeared under his footing which caused fire to envelop on both of his foots. Haruto then smirked under his mask and went to do a couple of somersaults which ended with him finishing Kaum and Kodakov with his flying kick. Meanwhile a few meters away from him, his wife Urza in her clear heart clothing was slicing down an army of moblins with a demon blade Crimson Sakura. In which caused the anthropomorphic pig-like creatures to become bacon slices. Taya was shooting down some human soldiers who were bidding to gain Endorse will with decomposition bullets, meanwhile Miyuki were getting the civilians to safety. As the battle went on, the redhead who Naruto ordered to not intervene his battle with Kefka was not seen anywhere near the side as she was flying towards the direction Naruto was at. Back with Naruto. Haraga. Shouted the now very pissed off clown as Naruto continued to absorb the dark magic attack with the Eye of Agamotto. Naruto smirked at this and said while wiggling his finger TSK, you've forgotten that dark magic won't work on me. The god of magic's frustration grew as he was thinking of any possible strategies. But since he was an insane clown, he didn't know what to do. Naruto seeing the frustration seen on the clown grew, simply took the chance to open up a portal behind Kefka while summoning the wand of Watum with a snap of his fingers. Naruto then said it's over Kefka, you've low only to be interrupted by Kefka who suddenly transformed into his god form which made him look like a demonic angel with purple skin and a red loincloth. His limbs became more muscular and he bears 6 wings, 4 light angelic wings and 2 dark light angelic wings. He still kept his long ponytail. Naruto mentally face-palmed at this as he had forgotten about Kefka's god form. The Sorcerer Supreme then sighed as he was forced to kick up his magic in order to beat this form. You cannot defeat me, Sama. For I am God. Kefka shouted as he began to warp reality to the point where the two of them were in a tripped-out psychedelic dimension. It almost looked apocalyptic. I knew that you are capable of distorting reality yourself, but I was too ignorant to remember about it. Naruto said as he opened the Eye of Agamotto by doing some hand gestures. Kefka laughed maniacally, then created some illusory clones of himself. He sent the clones at Naruto, to which Naruto placed back the wand of Watum back to the pocket dimension to grab ebony and ivory. He used both guns to shoot towards the clones, which destroyed all of Kefka's illusion clones. Kefka TSK''D at this, and then he heard a distant cry coming from a girl who was further away. With this Kefka shouted Light of Judgment. Kefka fired a large beam of light towards the source of the voice, in which Naruto knew the source was from his wife. With this, Naruto then quickly teleported in front of Taya and put up an energy shield to block said attack. As re-attack died down, Naruto asked Tae-chan, you could have died. Taya shook her head at this, while tears were streaming down from her eyes towards her cheeks, and said I don't care, as long as I know that my husband is still alive. I know that I'll be fine. Naruto was dumbstruck at this and said alright Tae-chan, if you can help me in this one task, then I'll buy you that scythe you've always wanted. At the mention of the scythe, Taya's face brightened up and said alright, I'll do it. Naruto smirked at his wife's behavior and said okay, transport all of the downed ninja to a safe area. Inlocuting Naruto looked at his biological family and continued them. Taya nodded at this and flew downwards to the downed Konoha nins and started helping out. Meanwhile Naruto disengaged the shield and said in a deep, grouchy and intimidating voice Kefka Palazzo, you've done enough damage to this world and then you've decided to try and kill my wife. With this, the earth underneath them began to shake and all of a sudden Naruto's body started to flare out a familiar aura. Kefka trembled almost in fear and said what is this power? Out of the blue, the sky turned dark and lightning suddenly stroked down towards Naruto, in which caused his wizard driver to suddenly announce. Brightening please. Bri. 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 In a matter of seconds, Naruto transformed into a darker shade of blue of his adoptive father's water-style wizard armor. However, the silver parts were replaced by gold and for some reason, the Eye of Agamotto was on top of his armored chest and his cloak was still on his shoulder. He then realized that in this state, Naruto could still use his other magic, but it will just become way more powerful. Naruto looked towards his palms as he raised both arms and thought so this is Haruto Tauchin's power, amazing. Naruto then shouted Kefka. As the Sorcerer Supreme of Elemental Nations 2100, I banish you into oblivion. Kefka ignored the threat and then fired another Light of Judgment at Naruto. Only for the attack to be deflected and then suddenly the Eye of Agamotto shone brightly on Naruto's chest. Kefka, not wanting to fall for any sort of trickery, fired his own attack at the eye. Forsaken. The god of magic threw a bright light of his own at Naruto and the attack sent him hurtling down towards the ground. However, he was unhurt and got back up. You're not going to win this one. Eye of Agamotto. He shouted. Nothing happened this time. No absorption of magic, no bright light, nothing. Huh? Naruto began to panic. Eye of Agamotto? Asked Kafka with a laugh. You mean this thing? Kafka laughed, holding the Eye of Agamotto in his hands. Let's see how this works. Kafka held it up to Naruto's face, but nothing happened. No absorption of magic, no bright light, nothing. Huh, this thing's probably broken. Before Kafka could even have the chance to attempt to use it again, Naruto quickly used the connect ring and took the Eye of Agamotto from Kafka to place it back on his chest. You thought you could steal it from me, didn't you? Asked Naruto. Suddenly, Naruto warped himself and Kafka into the mirror dimension. The two were then seen floating on an exact replica of the village. It looked the same or it wasn't. It was difficult to tell. How appropriate. You brought me to a place where I can kill you into a state of nothingness, which will be the remaining of your body when you die. Kafka quipped to Naruto. A giant pillar raised underneath Kafka, forming a tall tower of magic energy. The clown charged up a large wave of energy in rainbow colors all around him. Faraga. Blizzaga. Thindaga. Ultima. Forsaken. Light of Judgment. Kafka shouted all at once, now mad with power. A gigantic inferno, a freezing blizzard, a thundering storm, a reality-distorting wave of light, several streaks of red light, and a bright pillar of light all fired at Naruto. After a large explosion of possibly seizure-inducing light, Naruto was still standing. He had his energy shield raised the whole time and somehow managed to summon his trusty Sorcerer gun to actually take a shot using his weapon, which the bullet went directly towards Kafka's chest. All of a sudden, blood started to sputter out of the wound and the clown managed to mutter how. Naruto then flew towards Kafka and slapped him hard into the face. You don't get it, do you? Asked Naruto. Naruto opened up a portal behind Kafka. Kafka saw it behind him and the god of magic said impossible. I am the god of magic. You shouldn't be able to eat me. Naruto sighed at this and said a god in your definition is no match for the wrath of the Sorcerer Supreme, but stopped in midway and said also if you didn't realize, Ami wa Mushinderu. Kafka looked dumbfounded by this, but then saw his hand started to be decomposed slowly. As he then realized that the portal behind him was starting to suck him into it. The pillar of magic began to be sucked into the pillar and Kafka's whole body began to distort and melt away as his words came out distorted and unintelligible. Pieces of his body began to fall off as he fell apart completely, falling into Naruto's portal. Naruto then said and that's how Sephiroth died at Strange Sensei's hands. Naruto sighed at the fate of Kafka and quickly opened up a gateway to the real world. As he got back into the real world, Taya went to hug him even though she didn't even know whether it was Naruto or not. But she then whispered I saw how you've transformed into that armor that Haruto Tauchin happens to be equipping right now. She then let go of the hug and placed her arms comfortably onto his armored chest while asking so, what will your rider name be? Naruto smiled under his helmet while giving a reassuring hug to his wife and said Enchanter, Kamen Rider Enchanter. As they continued their hug, Haruto, Urza, Tsuya and Miyuki appeared via Haruto's teleportation ring. As they saw the state of the young couple, they simply smiled and let them be. Chapter 6. Rest and Relaxation. A few days later. Naruto sighed as he went through his mystical library. Here he was levitating while sitting cross-legged trying to find himself a book to read so that he could understand the powers of being a Kamen Rider with magical powers. He has been in library for the past 10 hours and it was nearing night time. He then found one which mentioned about phantoms. With this, Naruto popped his neck and gave it a read. But as he was about to read the book, Taya walked in and closed it. She then said Naruto no, your father already taught us about how to use your rider powers, just trust him. Naruto sighed as he stood up and said Taya, there is something wrong with me, I just can't comprehend that the fact that I am now basically the protector of Konoha. I came back to this village to see my dearest of friends. But in the end, I ended up protecting it. Naruto then slammed his arms onto a table nearby and growled in anger which caused Taya to flinch. Naruto then dropped onto the floor, trembling in fear. He then said with a shaky tone I'm conflicted Taya I don't even know myself anymore, part of me shouts kill them. But part of me shouts protect them. Naruto then started to tear up as he sat down while hugging his knees and said I don't know what to do I just need help. He then closed his eyes and muttered fuck me. Then all of a sudden, he felt a pair of lips on his own. Naruto widened his eyes as Taya was kissing him as if there was no tomorrow. Naruto then kissed her back and wrapped his arms around her waist. They continued to kiss like that for a few seconds and stopped for the sake of air. Naruto then got up and dusted himself off. He then sang don't worry my love he then wrapped both arms around Taya's waist and continued all of this is not a coincidence. He then proceeded to lift her up and continued we are totally different baby and then he twirled her around for a few seconds. Both him and his wife smiled as wide as during their wedding day. Naruto then stopped twirling her around and made sure she landed on her feet. They both then looked at each other and Naruto sang out, "The two of us found our destiny." DNA. Taya blushed at this and smacked Naruto's chest. Naruto then chuckled at this and said, "What? I really like that song." Taya facepalmed and said, "Another K-pop song coming from your mouth. I'll make sure you won't have children." Naruto smirked at this and sang love you so bad, molding a pretty Lee, but was interrupted by Taya smacking him on the chest. Naruto then sighed and said, "Fine, let's have a date, just you and I, at a very fancy restaurant, for once. How does that sound?" Taya caressed her chin at this for a few seconds and said, "Why not?" Naruto smiled at this and kissed him on the cheek. Naruto reacted by smacking one of her butt cheeks, in which she yelped in surprise. Naruto would then get out of the library and went to look around the sanctum, leaving a red-faced Taya who was blushing really hard. As per usual, his mother and father weren't around the living room. His uncle Tatsuya and Aunt Miyuki are probably sleeping in their rooms. Naruto would then chuckle as he went to his bedchambers and decided to change into his favorite suit. It was a red-tailed jacket suit with black floral patterns on it, accompanied with a black-colored tie tied around the collar of his dress shirt, a pair of leather shoes and a pair of black pants. Naruto would then look at himself on the mirror of his room while putting on some cologne on his wrists and neck. Naruto would then snap his finger and said nice as he was done. He would then get out of the room and went downstairs to see his wife in a white knee-length lacy dress that was strapless, and it seemed that she wasn't wearing a bra under it. Her hair was in a wavy layered bob with curly side bangs which showed more of her beautiful face. Naruto would then smirk at the side in front of him and walked up to her with the smirk still plastered on his face. Taya blushed at this and said in a stutter, "What's with that face?" Naruto didn't answer directly, but he whispered into her ear, "I'll be on top tonight." Taya would smirk at this and said as if. Naruto would then chuckle and held his wife's hand while saying, "I have a restaurant in mind, would you like to check it out?" Taya nodded at this and said, "Sure thing, my dearest husband." Naruto chuckled at this and opened up a gateway to a slightly fancy restaurant which was located just near the Hokage Tower. Naruto chuckled to himself as they arrived at the restaurant. Naruto would then lead his wife to the receptionist and said, "A table for two please." The receptionist nodded rather enthusiastically, which surprised both Naruto and Taya, while saying right. The receptionist would then look around and said as she pointed to a nice table, "There's one, you're very lucky sir. That's the best table we have." Naruto and Taya then looked at each other with widened eyes and said in unison, "What in the hell?" The receptionist would then lead them to the table and said, "Please wait for your waiter." The receptionist then left the married couple, as Naruto then said towards his wife, while having a very suggestive smirk towards his wife, "So what would you like to have tonight?" Taya smiled at him sweetly and said a big gigantic D, but was interrupted by Naruto, who placed his index finger on her lips to quiet her down, and he said, "Whoa, calm down there tiger. There are kids here." Taya smirked at him and said, "It's your fault for creating such a temptation with that suit of yours." Naruto chuckled at her, and they both then stared each other's eyes, not knowing that their waiter had already arrived. The waiter would then cough to gain their attention and said, "Good evening sir and madam. I'm Hiro, your waiter for today. So what would the both of you like to have for today?" The couple then hurriedly opened their menus and switched pages open so quickly that it may make lightning itself feel jealous. Naruto would then say, "A steak, medium rare with a side salad." Taya would then answer, "I'll be having what he's having." Hiro nodded and said, "Very well, what sort of drinks would the beau?" But Naruto quickly answered, "A big bottle of wine, please, just wine." Hiro nodded and walked to the kitchen to get their orders ready. Naruto would then look at Taya and said, "I love you, I do." Taya chuckled and said, "Well, I did get you whip." She would then pause for a second and continued, "I just realized that I used a whip during our last time, that was stupid of me." Naruto shook his head and said, "Woman, you really need to learn to phrase your words better." But this, the husband and wife laughed towards each other. Both haven't had enough moments like this in their 1 year of marriage. Naruto would then stop laughing and said, "Taya, I wouldn't know of what to do if you aren't here with me. It may sound cheesy, but it's the truth." Taya chuckled at this and said, "Yeah, you would have been a wreck without me." Naruto sighed while keeping a straight face. "Yeah, I mean we went through hell." Literally speaking, Taya didn't really pay attention to what he had just said, but all she did was looking into his eyes while admiring his manly features. Taya didn't really know how she ended up with him, but something about just made her to fall for him hard. He even joked about the fact, saying things like, "I guess I didn't miss her." Till this day, she doesn't know what he meant. Their food would then arrive and the husband and wife would then eat their food in silence. As they finished eating, Naruto would then get up and pay for the bill while giving the waiter a tip. Naruto would then return to his table and said, "Taya, come let me show you a nice scenery to look at." Naruto would then hold out his hand for Taya to take it. Taya would humbly accept it and they both would walk out of the restaurant together. Naruto would then open up a gateway to the Hokage mountain. He would then lead his wife into the gateway and as they arrived, both of them could agree that they both could see the whole Konoha from here. Naruto would then say, "Let's stay here till sunrise. I need to show you something. Taya simply nodded at this and they both sat by the edge of the mountain while waiting for the sun to rise. A few minutes later, Taya would say Naruto, I would like to ask you something. Naruto would then turn his head back to his wife and said go ahead. Taya would then clear her throat and said, why did you decide to return to Konoha? I know it can't be because of your dearest friends here. Naruto sighed at this and said it's well a lot of reasons. He would stop for a second and continued, they stripped me off my chakra and I wanted to show them that I didn't need chakra to battle. I also wanted to prove the fact that I am much more dangerous even with a furball inside me. Naruto would then start to tear up and said then there's the fact that my parents are still alive and I have a sister. I wanted to show them how much they fucked up, abandoning me for no absolute fucking reason. Taya widened her eyes at this and quickly wrapped her arms around her husband while saying shhhhhh. Naruto calm down. Naruto started crying onto his wife's shoulder and sang you're so beautiful that I'm scared. Taya teared up as well as they both embraced each other tightly. Then all of a sudden, the sun rose and both Naruto and Taya released each other and looked at the sun rise. Naruto and Taya would then have a passionate kiss which lasted for a while. As they let go, they left a huge strand of saliva which made them both blush at the same time. Naruto would then say Taya, let's go home. Taya nodded and said right. Naruto would then open up a gateway and would lead his wife into their room. Naruto would then push his wife onto the bed and unzipped his pants. Which would give him the sight of his wife's hair being stressed all around the mattress. Naruto would then say in grunts I'm going to do right now. Taya blushed at this and said I like you taking control. Naruto would then crawl onto bed and everything else was history. Little did they know, Naruto was outside hearing his son and daughter-in-law moaning and groaning while making hot and passionate love. What if Naruto is banished and has a wife? Taya, and thanks for watching my video till the end. If you enjoy this content, then do consider subscribing to my channel and leave a like if you guys need the next part, comment down, and thanks for watching the video and see you guys in the next video.